Lightning tears through the sky above the castle as the era repeats itself yet again. The doors burst open as armored heroes charge in with weapons raised, convinced that justice stands firmly on their side. They acknowledge the lone figure standing before them as the Demon King. The king reflects inwardly on how heavy this role feels as he confirms it. He declares himself the ruler of all demons and declares his place as the 100th Demon King named Luke. He acknowledges the hero's arrival while he quietly wonders when this endless cycle truly began. The memory shifts to the past where demons were branded as evil and slaughtered under the banner of justice. The demons fought back against humanity in response to the bloodshed. Time passes and any hope of negotiation long since erased. He reflects that everything was sacrificed for nothing. He frames the clash as a foolish game where whoever survives will gain the right to rule everything. He calmly envisions a future where the strongest heroes bring him down. But he remains unbothered by the outcome as he observes how both sides are already aiming straight for each other's lives. He's accepted that any chance for discussion has long disappeared. The Demon King draws from absolute power, while the heroes draw from trials set by gods and spirits. With those trump cards from both sides, a fierce battle is promised. Luke echoes the truth that justice will prevail, which is why blood sprays as he is struck by one of the heroes. He steadies himself as he recognizes the perfectly assembled trio before him and the simple rule they follow, where heroes are just and he alone is evil. He calmly accepts that defeating him would look like the right choice from the hero's side. The hero tightens her grip and questions Luke's sudden laughter. Silence follows as Luke's expression softens. He remembers a friend's daughter and her birthday arriving the very next day. His mind drifts to a quiet memory of Iris as he imagines a visit. The vision sharpens into her bright smile as he accepts that the fall of demonkind is drawing close. Tears slip from his eyes as he realizes that once he dies, the demons will be relentlessly hunted, which includes Iris as well. The hero acknowledges Luke's resolve and admits she sees no lie in it. Luke prepares to reveal the truth and admits that until this moment all they had ever done was try to destroy each other. He reflects on how the church brands the demons as a servant of evil through its teachings, but he argues that humans and demons are no different and urges them to witness the truth themselves. The hero listens in silence as Luke urges their feelings. His expression softens as he speaks of demonkind. He hints on the possibility of a shared future between demons and humanity. The hero remains still behind her helmet. Her hand loosens from the sword as she quietly accepts what he has said. She chooses to trust his words and vows not to judge demons for what they are. Gratitude crosses his face as realization dawns on him, and he recognizes her as a woman beneath the armor. Luke accepts this final sight as his farewell before death claims him. As darkness closes in, he notices the Saintess staring at him with raw hatred. Luke fades before the hero as he entrusts the future to her presence alone. History records that the Demon King vanished after losing to the hero. In the fading dark, a distant voice calls his name. Light floods in as he opens his eyes. The woman leaves him confused as he realizes he is looking at a human. Her hand reaches forward with calm intent as he wonders what she plans to do next. She bends closer and reassures him softly as his small hand instinctively reaches out. The woman cradles him in her arms and senses his hunger. His new mother named Media tells him that she'll be preparing his meal soon. Warmth spreads through him even as he struggles to stay conscious. His thoughts drift into an image of rebirth, where lives cross boundaries and return in new forms. Resting in the crib, he recalls the old demon myth and realizes he is living it himself. Memories begin to surface clearly despite his fragile state. Images of comrades from the past overlap with the moment of his defeat. He starts to wonder why he was reborn with his past memories and whether any meaning exists behind it. He concludes that no matter how much he thinks, this fragile body can only eat and sleep for now. Comparing this life to his past filled with duties and battles, he realizes becoming a baby has left him strangely free. He decides he needs to gather information fast. He imagines asking about the time passed since his defeat, but he immediately remembers he cannot speak. He wishes he could move on his own soon as the maid remembers something. He observes her preparing hot water with a tool. Murmured words fill the air as she kneels and attempts a spell. He questions whether that was truly a spell at all as he fixates on the sloppy phrasing and grammar. He notes that such basic magic should not require chants or tools at all. Still, he admits that since reincarnating into this body, he has not used magic even once. He curls his tiny fist and wonders how much magical power remains now that he is human. Red energy suddenly erupts around him. He realizes his magic may have carried over along with his memories. He feels the sensation is familiar yet harder to control than it was in his former life. He resolves that with special training, he can eventually make it work. As he drifts to sleep, he swears not to repeat a life destroyed by weakness again. Time skips ahead 7 years as the quiet village gives way to a boy mastering magic among floating books. A snap of his fingers releases a controlled spark of red magic as he can now activate spells at will. Books tremble and slide from the shelves as his power tugs at them. The grown-up Luke admits he was worried at first while testing his magic. He grins as he reflects that at 7 years old, he has learned to use magic to a workable extent. He thinks that even if he can use large-scale magic, it is far too dangerous to test, since a single mistake could wipe out an entire village. He realizes that aside from raw magic, he has also gained other kinds of understanding. He looks outside and recalls his defeat by the hero. He knows that thousands of years have already gone by since that moment. He understands that everything feels different now for a reason. His thoughts are interrupted when his mother opens the door and finds him there. She reacts with mild surprise as she notices the book he's holding. He confirms that he's been reading about the ancient demons' myths again. Ancient demons once fought humanity and are now dismissed as nothing more than myths. Media gently teases him and suggests it might simply be the age where fantasy holds its strongest pull. Luke smiles under her gentle hand as he quietly believes that some of the ancient demons still remain. He knows that demons live far longer than humans, and that only a handful of survivors might still exist. The conversation shifts as Media mentions his father's imminent return. She explains that the letter promised a return in 2 weeks and cheerfully hopes he will bring home more books. His father is a sword instructor of the kingdom's knights named Patrick and the respected lord of their village. He feels a warm anticipation at the thought of seeing his father again and wonders if he might resume sword training with him. His mother suddenly remembers her original errand. She reminds him of his plans to play with his friends. She rushes him out the door with urgency while he scrambles to keep up and agree. His footsteps pound the dirt path as he admits to himself that he has already arrived a little late. A hand urgently waves to get his attention. His friends gather ahead and loudly call him out for being late. The group reunites near the bridge while Luke's friends tease him for arriving so late. Russ steps forward with his hands on his hips, clearly annoyed that Luke did not show up on time. Luke explains with an awkward smile that he lost track of time because he was absorbed in reading. Russ scoffs at the excuse and boasts about his dream of becoming an adventurer. Luke reacts with mild disbelief as Russ passionately talks himself up. May jumps in and mocks Russ's obsession with adventure, while pointing out his lack of sword training. Russ snaps back at May's sharp remarks. Yuri steps between them and defends dreams as something important. Luke reflects that he has gained childhood friends since his reincarnation. He notices that both Yuri and May seem oddly invested in Rust, which explains why they resist the idea of leaving the village. Luke finds it amusing that Rust remains completely oblivious to their feelings. He turns to Rust and casually brings up the promise Rust made. Rust lights up as he confirms he has been eagerly anticipating it. Rust reveals that today is the day something special is supposed to happen. The group pauses in unison as Rust excitedly declares that real adventurers are coming. The others cautiously point out that visitors do pass through the village from time to time. Rust launches into a fantasy of legendary adventurers blazing trails and becoming heroes of myth. The group resigns to his excitement and agrees to head to the village entrance. The group sprint through the street as they notice a crowd forming ahead. Rust peers ahead with anticipation. Rust sees the townsfolk gather near the gate. The group looks awkward when they realize the adventurers have not arrived yet. Rust grows impatient and starts fidgeting. He suddenly decides to run ahead to check the front, leaving the others shouting after him. Luke watches Rust go with a small smile as his thoughts linger on adventurers. His thoughts drift to the modern role of adventurers as explorers and monster slayers in lands long untouched. He wonders if this change is simply the result of time passing. His reflection is abruptly cut short when a scream snaps him back to the present. A feral monster bursts from the forest as panic spreads. The beast charges straight toward Rust. Luke steadies himself and gathers power as he recognizes the creature as a forest monster that cannot be taken lightly. A sharp gust erupts as an elf woman unleashes a wind spell to intercept the attack. The roaring vortex slams into the monster and lifts its massive body off balance. From above, a seasoned adventurer descends with a weapon raised to finish the opening she created. The adventurer cleaves through the monster with brutal precision. Luke stares wide-eyed. The monster fades before Rust's eyes as the adventurer descends to the ground. The adventurer turns to Rust, who sits frozen on the ground. He asks Rust if he's been hurt anywhere. Rust stares up at him with wide eyes. Then he bursts with excitement and rushes toward the adventurer in awe. The girls remind him to thank the adventurer and he follows through immediately, Rust leading the thanks while the others beam beside him. The elf woman responds warmly and reassures everyone that their safety is what matters most. Luke suddenly stiffens as he looks at the elf. Rust bluntly asks whether the elf is some kind of spirit. The elf introduces herself as Yumi and explains her origins as a race born from spirits. The adventurer introduces himself as Gran and mentions that he travels together with Yumi. Luke reflects on the immense magical power they displayed and notes that neither of them seems ordinary at all. Yumi and Gran remark on how surprising it is that village kids like Rust dream of becoming adventurers. Rust reacts instantly with flushed cheeks and an enthusiastic answer. He declares his dream with raised fists as Yumi and Gran watch with amused approval. Gran ruffles Rust's hair and reassures him that the dream itself is not impossible. His tone sharpens as he warns that chasing such a path without proper training would be deadly. Rust accepts the warning with sparkling eyes. Gran promises adventure stories if Rust shows them to the inn. Yuri and Mei watch from behind and comment on how boys never really change. Yumi notices the tension between the children as Luke tells her it as a typical childhood love triangle. Yumi asks about Luke and he claims to be nothing more than an observer. The elf leans in with a playful smile and points out how unusual he is. She teasingly suggests that he should stake his claim early, which he flatly dismisses as terrible advice for a child. He tells her that he finds situations like this more fun to simply watch unfold. His comment makes the elf pause in visible disbelief. She sighs and takes back her earlier praise while he decides to guide her to the inn as well. Yumi casually mentions their own monster trouble earlier as they walk to the inn. Inside, the lively tavern erupts with cheers and drinks. While drinking, Gran remarks that Yumi has developed an unusual interest in ruins. Yumi animatedly recalls how much worse things were during a past fighting tournament. Media remarks that the adventurers are so kind and Luke agrees. A man casually brings up the ruins outside the village, which catches Yumi's attention. He tells them that the ruin is old and forgotten, with no clear purpose. Yumi hints that the ruins may hold more meaning than they appear to at first glance. Yuri suddenly blurts out her theory that it might have been built by ancient demons. Gran casually shuts down the theory as he grounds the fantasy with a veteran's skepticism. The elf still clings to the romance of the idea, while Luke quietly considers that Gran's blunt realism might be correct. By a single glance, the ruins feel clear they are tied to ancient demons, even if there is no way to truly prove it yet. Luke reflects that demons are known to be nothing more than myths anyway. Mei excitedly jumps into the conversation, misunderstanding the topic as a ruin investigation rather than monster hunting. Gran explains that for him, exploring ruins and fighting in tournaments are simply hobbies, and that this trip happened because Yumi wanted to come. Luke notes that Gran pursues these things whenever he can because he genuinely wants to. He describes them as people who explore freely without being bound to anything. His mother watches him as he smiles. Meanwhile, Rust approaches Gran and declares his strong desire to become an adventurer. He clenches his fist and boldly promises to train hard as he asks to be taken on as an apprentice. Gran immediately shuts the idea down. Rust panics at the rejection while Gran reacts with blunt denial. Gran explains that adventuring is not glamorous and is filled with mundane work, especially at the start. He continues by telling Rust he cannot afford to look after him until he becomes an adventurer. Rust reframes his request and asks if he could be accepted as an apprentice once he becomes an adventurer. Gran bursts into laughter. He gives in with a grin and agrees to become Rust's master someday while warning that his teaching will be limited. Luke beams as he watches them and quietly notes how skilled Rust is at negotiating, although media wonders if Rust's condition is good enough to hold out. Luke reassures her that Rust will be fine because he has real potential. Across the table, the girls sit together as the idea that Rust will become an apprentice settles in naturally. They agree that it is good for him but still feel uneasy about how fired up he might become. Yumi suddenly pulls both girls into a cheerful hug as she asks what they are whispering about. The girls flail in surprise as Yumi apologizes for scaring them. She casually says she just wanted in on the girls' conversation. The girls freeze in shock as Yumi bluntly wonders if their talk was about love troubles. The girls deny it completely and insist they are only worried because Rust can be clumsy. Yumi softens her tone and admits she might be overthinking. She admits she's certain that Rust will achieve his dream. She asks them if staying behind in the village will truly be enough when the time comes to see Rust off. The night grows late and an adult voice cuts in. The innkeeper firmly tells the children to leave. Media gently calls him to head home together. Before leaving, Luke reflects on how interesting Gran and Yumi are to him. As the two adventurers wave goodbye, Luke could only wish to have heard more stories from them. Walking outside, Luke wonders when the village last felt this lively. The loneliness that follows a party settles in as a familiar feeling that never really changes. Media calls out to him. She looks up at the sky and hints that he will choose to do something too one day. When he asks what she means, she simply brushes it off. He smiles softly as he lets it go. He walks through the village with Media, certain she knows that one day he will also leave this village behind. In the forest, Luke grips a wooden sword alone. He practices again and again, swinging with focus and discipline as his movements sharpen. A gust circles him as he steadies his stance. He ends the session smiling and calls it a day, careful not to draw attention to his progress. On his way home, he thinks about improving even more before the next practice as he notices something. The village suddenly stirs as he wonders what's going on. Luke is confronted by worried adults who question why he is alone. One of the villagers hesitates before speaking. The realization hits Luke hard when he understands that Rust and the others are missing. He echoes the woman's words in disbelief. She explains that she cannot find the children anywhere since morning and anxiously checks if Luke knows something. She worries that because the kids didn't want to leave the tavern last night, they might have left without permission. Luke tightens his expression and admits that this possibility makes sense. He recalls Yumi mentioning a nearby ruin close to the village, a place he has never visited and one that lies in the opposite direction. Luke says he will search for them and rushes off. He reassures her that he will do his best. Luke sprints away and notices Yumi before him. He suddenly stops as recognition sets in. He locks eyes with Yumi as she turns toward him. Yumi warns him to stay back as she raises her hand and declares she will form a protective barrier. Surrounded by swirling mana, Yumi invokes the spirits bound to the forest and offers her own power in exchange. Luke urgently stops her and explains that Rust and the other kids have gone missing. He says they are likely no longer in the village and they might have headed toward the nearby ruin. She apologizes and admits she cannot interrupt the barrier spell she has already begun casting. She fully activates a mystical wall that surrounds the village. He reacts in shock and protests, while she insists that safeguarding the villagers must come before anything else. Before she can finish explaining the truth, something violently interrupts. A massive flying magic machine suddenly appears overhead. He realizes these machines came from the ruin and understands that several of them have already slipped past the barrier into the village. His expression hardens as he recognizes how serious the situation has become. He identifies the machines as demon-made weapons designed to kill humans. With Yumi's barrier holding firm, the village is spared while the flying machines drift past. Yumi points out that the real mystery is not the ruin itself but what happened after they tried to return. As the wall suddenly collapsed, Gran stayed behind to keep fighting the massive magic machines alone. Luke pieces together that the ruin was a deliberate trap and that something must be controlling the machines. He abruptly tells Yumi he needs to go somewhere else right away. Yumi turns back in shock. She insists she cannot cancel the barrier and reminds him that he is still just a child. She explains that only the caster can decide who is allowed to pass through the wall and urges Luke to go home. As Luke reaches out, the barrier reacts violently with a surge of red energy. The magic engulfs the barrier as the wall distorts. Yumi panics as she realizes something is interfering with her spell. Luke calmly apologizes and reveals that he is forcefully altering the magic formula. Yumi recoils in shock, unable to believe that rewriting a completed magic equation is even possible. As the barrier shifts and tightens around them, Luke adds one last condition. He explains that he boosted the barrier's output using her own mana. He tells her she cannot leave and that the same restriction applies to anyone who passes through. Luke says he is counting on her as he turns away, determined to find his friends. Yumi shouts after him in frustration as he dashes off. She stares after him in disbelief, struggling to process what he just did. The entrance to the ancient ruin looms quietly. Gran notices that even if the machines are active, they are not attacking. He warns everyone to stay absolutely still, suspecting the construct reacts only to movement. He admits under his breath that at this pace he will not be able to protect everyone. Luke suddenly appears and rushes toward Gran. Gran demands an explanation while Luke urgently explains that Yumi is casting a barrier around the village to keep people safe. Gran immediately orders Luke to hide with the other children. Luke notices that at least for now, everything seems stable. He looks at Gran's opponent and sees a giant construct once designed for civil labor, but repurposed for combat in emergencies. He steels himself and realizes that he may be the only one capable of stopping these titans. He concludes that these monsters have the same purpose as those flying outside the village. Luke studies the distance while Gran panics behind him. Despite Gran's warning, Luke walks forward anyway as the others desperately try to stop him. Rust and the girls cry out in fear. Luke reassures Gran that he will be fine and asks him to trust him completely. A stone titan shifts its weight. The titan's red eye sharpens. Luke narrows his gaze and plants his feet firmly on the ground. The titan hums ominously. Luke realizes this is as far as he can go without triggering an attack. Gran realizes they are like sentries guarding the ruin. Luke quietly agrees in his thoughts, noting that he has no memory of this ruin and suspects it was built after his death. He steps forward with resolve and declares his intent to go inside, only to be stopped immediately. Gran firmly refuses and makes it clear he will not allow Luke to risk his life over their mistake. He emphasizes that Luke is still just a child and lacks the strength to fight. Luke processes his words as if testing their meaning. He concludes that everything should be fine as long as he is strong enough. Luke confirms Gran's condition and asks him to watch what he's about to do. He sprints straight toward the towering stone giants. One of the titans locks its red eye onto him. It raises its weapon up high. Luke's boot slams into the ground. Red energy coils around his body as he leaps high into the air. His expression sharpens into calm focus as he draws his fist. The punch lands squarely into the titan's body and shatters the stones. Gran and the others stare in disbelief. Luke lands low between the titans as they close in. He focuses his power into his hand and braces himself. The titan's weapon halts before his touch. He redirects the force and slams the weapon away, targeting the same titan who wielded it. Gran stares in disbelief as Luke stands amid the shattered stones. Luke turns back and asks if his strength is enough to see this through. Gran hesitates and admits he cannot judge the full extent of that power but insists on setting limits. He explains that the ruin is dangerous and insists that either he or Yumi should be present inside. He plans to return the other kids to the village and promises to come back after escorting them safely. He lays down the strict condition and asks Luke not to proceed further until he returns. Luke turns to the others and calmly tells them to take care. The girls admit their mistake and worry about him. Luke gives a casual wave as they turn to leave. He looks ahead with quiet resolve and suggests that it is time to head inside. He places his hand on the glowing console. He notes that shutting down the magical machinery was simple once he got inside. He scans for additional data and pauses when he notices something else. He realizes there are no long-range attack systems listed in the controls. He realizes that the machines outside were designed purely for defense rather than offense. The thought unsettles him as he wonders if the ruin exists to protect something important. The display reveals a large chamber deep within the structure, and he feels compelled to investigate it immediately. But he remembers Gran insisting that he wait and not act alone. He smiles faintly and reassures himself that he will keep his promise. He sits down along the corridor instead. He curls into himself and convinces himself not to remember his past life's memories. The building, once bustling with people and noise, is now reduced to a lonely echo around him. His eyes lift slightly as a voice calls out. Gran arrives at last as he apologizes for being late and checks on Luke. Luke forces a small smile and reassures him that he is fine. He explains that the ruins are cold by nature, especially this deep underground. He asks if the magical machinery has stopped and receives confirmation that everything has shut down cleanly. When asked how it was done, he shrugs it off as an accident from touching things. Gran asks him about Yumi Barrier. As he suggests casually rewriting the spell again, Gran cuts in firmly. Gran tells him that even a skilled magician would need time to manage it. Luke internally admits he expected things to go faster with Yumi's skills. He assures Gran that he will lift the barrier and points out that moving deeper inside feels more important. They stop together as they arrive. They wonder if this is truly the innermost chamber. Gran presses his hand against the surface and realizes the door has no intention of opening. He explains that ruined doors respond only to specific conditions and suggests the answer might lie in the previous room. Luke dismisses that idea and shows reluctance at the thought of going back. He reaches out again and senses there may be another method. The embedded crystal reacts as waves of magic stir, and it recognizes a clear response from the energy. As the system scans deeper, it identifies a match tied to an ancient king. Luke freezes as a sudden realization hits him. The crystal mechanism responds to his command. The lock embedded in the door begins to shift, and the massive doors slowly part. They both agree to move ahead, despite the uncertainty. They step inside, and both of them stop short. At the center of the vast room, an egg-like capsule rests on a pedestal. Luke becomes convinced that the object was meant to preserve the future of his kind even in defeat. He wonders whether the experiment succeeded, and if someone might still be inside. He freezes in place as he wonders if he will ever see his former companions again. He pleads desperately for someone to still be alive inside as they approach it. He leans forward in worry and anticipation. He recognizes the sleeping figure at once and calls out her name. A memory surfaces of her smiling on her last birthday, a moment he never got to celebrate because of the war. Realizing how much time has passed, he trembles at the thought that they might finally reunite after thousands of years. Gran steps in, confused by the situation, and demands to know why someone is sealed in such a place. He keeps his realization to himself, knowing the girl inside is an ancient demon whose nature no one understands anymore. Luke senses faint signs of life and believes there is a chance she is still alive. Gran decides they should open the capsule and check what remains inside. Luke stands frozen beside the capsule. A familiar sense of déjà vu quietly creeps in as he reaches out. Red energy appears as his hand touches the surface. The hibernation device asks for confirmation to stop its function. Luke shouts to stop the process and demands that the life inside be prioritized. The device responds and begins to react. The device slides upright as the sleeping girl stirs slightly. Gran confirms that she is alive and Luke answers softly with relief. He gazes at her with a gentle smile, finally saying her name after so long. A memory surfaces of a past conversation with Bacchus filled with hope and a future that was once eagerly awaited. Later, Bacchus praises Iris as he marvels at how much she has grown. She lights up with a bright smile as she excitedly calls out to her uncle. The memory fractures as the device finally opens. Iris lies peacefully within the capsule. Her closed eyes twitch open. She slowly opens her eyes as she awakens. Gran and Luke watch closely. Iris's eyes burn crimson with power, and Gran instantly realizes the danger she poses. Gran is violently thrown back by a sudden surge of power. Luke turns in panic toward the source of the magic, demanding to know what Iris is doing. He freezes as realization dawns. Iris rises as her power spirals from her hand. Luke reminds himself that he is now a human. Iris steps out of the device and moves towards Luke. He recalls how humans and demons have long been locked in bloodshed. Iris names him a human as she gathers more power. Her expression hardens as she raises her hand and condemns the human before her without hesitation. A violent surge of magic erupts outward as her attack detonates. She steadies herself amid the fading blast. She vows revenge, even as smoke drifts between them. She freezes when she senses something wrong. Luke appears, holding her pulsing red mass of magic. He gathers it all into a blob and calmly acknowledges her growth. He explains that this kind of magic was once a simple game to him back when he lived as the Demon King. A memory surfaces of him joyfully juggling magic with children. He recreates the same technique now and surrounds himself with countless flowing red orbs under perfect control. Iris watches in stunned silence. She stares in shock and disbelief as she realizes the one before her is truly Luke. He gently shapes his magic in his hand while calling out to her. He smiles and says he came to visit her. Tears well in her eyes as recognition finally sinks in. She breaks into a run. She throws herself into him, clinging tightly as emotion overflows. He holds her close and soothes her as she cries into his shoulder. While still embracing her, he glances aside to check on Gran nearby. He lies slumped and unconscious, his condition stable but clearly shaken. Luke suddenly grows serious as he senses that the situation is not yet over. He studies the blast she released and realizes its output closely matches a soldier's magic bullet rather than anything of her era. He recalls that this level of magic should not have existed back then. The present snaps back as she breaks down in tears. His teasing reaction only leaves her stunned and flustered. She lashes out in embarrassment and frustration, admitting she had been preparing herself to avenge him the entire time. She pauses and hesitates as a new doubt crosses her mind. She notes his speech, and even his body no longer matches what she remembers. Her rapid questions pile up until he spirals in confusion. He softens and promises to explain everything carefully. Before anything else, she checks on Gran and relaxes when she learns he is still alive. She panics over Gran's condition while Luke tells her she has to apologize to him later. He tells her that he only met Gran not long ago and insists that he is not a bad person. Iris brightens at Luke's reassurance when he says that they'll tell him it was only an accident. He casually remarks that it would be inconvenient if Gran woke up right now. He suggests they talk while they wait and admits he has many things he wants to ask. Iris agrees without hesitation. The two sit together near the device and wonder where they should even begin. Iris firmly rejects the idea that Luke being the Demon King would be hard to believe. She declares that Luke is simply Luke to her. He looks at her with amusement as she goes on, saying she's not doubting him. He asks how she can be so certain, and she says it's because of him casually juggling magic bullets earlier. She argues that only someone of his caliber could control that much power. Even when Luke mentions Bacchus, Iris quickly dismisses it. She admits his control was never refined, which confirms the difference. She argues that her grandfather is capable of the same feat but uninterested beyond his research. She mentions her older sister, and he quietly agrees with the comparison. He smiles faintly, admitting it is a mundane memory and that her family was always like that. He realizes he cares more deeply about his brethren than he admits. She apologizes for bringing up painful memories, but he reassures her that listening actually made him happy. The tension eases as both admit they feel relieved now. She hesitates as she points out something else. She says everything about his body and age is unmistakably human. He looks away while struggling to put his thoughts into words, recalling that Iris was never someone who hated humans. He remembers her sharp expression back then and considers that she may have been unable to accept the reality she faced. He tightens his grip and softly calls her name. At last, he admits the truth to her, explaining that he was reincarnated. She repeats the word in disbelief while he lays out how, after his death, he returned in a human body long after everything ended. He adds that his current life includes gentle human parents, people who raised him with kindness. She turns quiet as she processes his words. After hearing everything, she relaxes slightly and admits she feels relieved. She confesses that knowing he is satisfied as a human leaves her with no reason to see humanity as an enemy anymore. She awkwardly admits she once planned to avenge him, only to fluster herself as she remembers how violent those times truly were. She panics and argues that she hasn't done anything horrible. She describes an example from the past where demons were gathered and humans were wiped out. Another memory follows where a warning note was left instead, and Luke internally thinks how that already is violent. He wonders whether that demonkind was truly wiped out after all the trouble caused. He says it would have been expected if humans started a campaign to hunt demons down again. She admits that such a campaign did happen before. Holy forces advanced under the church's authority where demons would not have survived if it continued. He reacts in shock as he realizes the campaign was halted. She answers calmly that it was not a choice but a limitation. She explains that humanity split into two factions, one under the church and the other under the hero who defeated him. He stares ahead in stunned silence. He realizes that the hero did keep her promise. Iris reflects on the irony that those who once killed the Demon King are now the ones protecting his former people. When asked what became of humanity after that war, she admits that she truly does not know. She recalls being captured during her resistance and falling into deep hibernation before she ever regained consciousness. He's stunned by the idea of a human capturing a demon without receiving any damage. Iris recalls how the captor used a magical device to block her senses, and she believes it was a woman based on the presence and silhouette she remembers. She admits she still does not know the reason behind that act, but looking back she feels grateful for it. Iris explains that because of that intervention, she was finally able to meet Luke again. He quietly calls her name in awe. Iris tugs at his sleeve and leans closer. She confesses that during the time they spent together, she was genuinely happy. She remembers how he always made time for her despite his work, playing with her and celebrating her birthday every year. Her voice trembles as she recalls the day she heard the news of his death. Iris clings to him and admits she thought she would never be able to speak to him like this again. She begs him through tears not to force himself anymore. He gently places a hand on her head and apologizes softly. He explains that now that he is human, what happened before will never happen again. She hesitates and asks how she is supposed to stay by his side now that he is human. She wonders if the other demons are aware of his situation. He regretfully asks her to listen carefully. He tells her that the era where demonkind existed is already over. He adds that more than a millennium has passed, and that everything in the world has changed. She quietly asks if demonkind has already been annihilated. He admits that some may still be alive, but they are regarded as ancient beings and remembered only as legends. She falls quiet as the weight of her thoughts settles in. She admits she had already prepared herself for this outcome, yet says she is fine now despite being separated from those she once held close. She explains that this feeling is something she has grown used to after his death. A grim memory surfaces of a young Iris witnessing her friends being slaughtered far too early in her life. His hands clench as he wishes he could have protected the demonkind. He bows his head in apology. She smiles softly and reassures him that it is all right. She stands and tells him that he had already done his best at that time. Her steps echo as she says that if he had not been their king, the demons would never have survived that long. She turns away and reflects that he was their king and their hope. Luke looks up in shock as she reassures him once more. He mentally calls out to Bacchus and tells him that his daughter has grown well. Iris wonders aloud if being seen as a legendary demon would put her at risk, her thoughts spiraling despite her efforts to stay calm. Luke explains that Gran is an adventurer currently traveling with Yumi, an ancient being. He adds that Gran did not even realize he had faced a demon since such truths are no longer known to the public. Luke sighs as he admits that living together means he somehow has to convince his mother. Gran grimaces in pain as his consciousness returns. He sees Iris and Luke speaking together. Iris suddenly blurts out a suggestion to hire her as a housemaid. The image of the violent Iris flashes before Gran's eyes. His voice cuts through their conversation. Gran leaps to his feet with his sword drawn, furious and demanding an explanation. Iris stands still in silence. Luke hurriedly explains that everything was a misunderstanding and insists Iris will not attack anymore. Gran reacts in shock and confusion. He admits the killing intent is gone, though he still does not fully understand. Gran presses for an explanation and demands to know why he was attacked in the first place. Iris lowers her head and frames it as a simple case of mistaken identity. She apologizes directly as she admits Gran looked like an enemy tied to someone precious to her. Gran stands in silence as he absorbs the weight of her apology. He reflects on her words and pieces together her past and realizes her strength came from pain endured too young. He acknowledges how harsh life can be. He finally accepts the explanation and decides to treat it as an accident and urges them to move forward together. Both of them look relieved now that the tension has eased. She bows politely to Gran in thanks, while he awkwardly asks her to stop being so formal. Gran raises concern about Iris while Luke admits that is exactly what he wanted to bring up. He explains that Iris has no family to return to and that she appeared after being sealed away in the ruins. He suggests village life might suit her better, reasoning that the city would only lead her into hardship. The group quickly agrees to head back for now. Walking through the ruins together, Gran wonders aloud if this place truly belonged to an ancient demonic race. Luke reflects that while there is no proof, the connection feels undeniable in his mind. He reflects that meeting Iris was only possible because of this place. He admits there were many truths about ancient demons and being a demon lord that he could never tell anyone until now. He realizes he can finally talk to her as the only remaining kin of his kind. She turns with a soft smile. He looks back at her, momentarily unsure how to respond to her gaze. Gran points out Yumi's absence and suggests a proper investigation another day. Energized by the discovery, Gran laughs and says they will likely be busy from now on. Luke teases Gran about becoming famous and mockingly says he's envious. Gran snaps back playfully and reminds him that he will be busy as well. Iris gently adds that he also explored the ruins and deserves recognition for what he has done. Luke argues that no one would believe that a 7-year-old kid managed to do that. Gran tells him that everyone will believe it because Gran himself will spread the story. A grin creeps into Luke's face. Gran jokes about his loose lips and hints that Yumi will likely tell about the barrier tampering. Luke realizes the implications as Gran reminds him of how they get when they drink. Luke pauses to collect his thoughts and admits he does not want his past exposed. He mutters that standing out sounds like trouble as Gran notices his concern. Gran reassures him that he will keep quiet and not make things troublesome. The tension breaks as they trade easy banter, laughing about how even top adventurers have first-rate jokes. Luke reflects that his trust was not misplaced since there is no sign of betrayal. He decides they seem trustworthy enough to talk about things someday. He walks ahead and thinks he will return later and sort out his feelings after some time. Without warning, the ground shakes violently and the ruins crumble behind them. They look back in horror and confusion as rubble collapses. Gran shouts after it as he sees the remains. He mutters that things like this just happen sometimes, especially when he is with Yumi. He explains that what remains here is nothing more than the village's magic machine and scattered fragments of the giant it once relied on. He shrugs it off by saying that even this outcome is still better than being left with nothing at all. Iris hesitates for a moment. With a tired smile, he admits that Yumi is definitely going to cry when she sees what became of the place. Footsteps crunch softly as the group begins moving again. Luke feels nervous now that they are about to meet Yumi face to face. He recalls how her chanting and control of magic were impressive, and how he simply rewrote her barrier without hesitation. He concludes that Yumi must already be inside the barrier as Gran announces their return. Luke quietly calls out her name. Ahead of them, Yumi stands enveloped in an ominous aura. Her eyes are sharp and glowing as restrained power churns around her. The group faces her at a distance. Luke freezes as he stutters her name. Yumi lowers her head as she faces Luke. Her composure snaps as she erupts in anger and scolds Luke for acting alone and altering the spell. Luke stammers and calls out for Gran and Iris's help. Gran sighs in resignation and admits that once Yumi starts lecturing, there is no stopping her. Iris smiles softly as she feels a strange familiarity over Luke being scolded. Yumi goes on and reminds him of what he could have faced if he had been surrounded by machines. She firmly makes him acknowledge the gravity of what happened, and he bows his head as he admits he understands. She calmly adds that she ensured the other kids returned home safely and brings up his magic. She guessed that his parents were unaware, so she told them Luke was traveling with Gran. She leaves the remaining details to him, while he thanks her. She then asks him to dissolve the barrier and admits she tried many times but found it impossible. Iris reaches out to the barrier as magic flares. The barrier shatters into glowing fragments. Yumi panics in disbelief as Iris stands calmly before her. Iris smiles gently and asks if everyone is fine with this outcome. The group erupts into mixed shock and noise as Luke leans over her. Iris smiles wryly as she admits Yumi might be going a bit too hard on the uncle, so she wanted a small personal revenge. He said she should have intervened while he was being scolded, but she admits she understood why Yumi was angry. Gran sighs with a tired smile and suggests calling it a day. He tells Yumi to head to the inn while he takes care of escorting the others. She points towards them and calls out both Luke and Iris together. She sternly reminds them to explain everything properly the next day. The group prepares to move, with Gran telling Luke to lead the way. They walk back to the village and ahead of them, Media stands waiting. Luke notices her and stops. His mother's expression tightens. She finally confronts him about his absence. He admits he went out briefly and reveals it was to the ruins. She steps forward and strikes him across the face. Their faces both struggle with guilt and anger. She suddenly pulls him into a tight embrace and drops to her knees. She admits she was scared and needed him to understand that fear. He apologizes quietly while holding her, explaining that leaving was something he felt he had to do. She accepts his answer and admits she had already known it in her heart. She closes her and accepts the situation with quiet resignation. She turns to Gran and asks if Luke had been of any help. Gran answers firmly that Luke was helpful and explains that the magic machine in the ruins was targeting the village. He tells her that if Luke had not acted, real damage would have followed. She wonders aloud if Luke's skill comes from his father's martial arts training. Media then notices Iris beside Gran. She questions who she is and whether she belongs to the village. With a polite bow, Iris introduces herself by name. Iris explains that she was sleeping in the ruins due to circumstances and was saved by the two of them. She admits she had lost someone dear and fell into the enemy's trap while trying to take revenge. She admits that many years have passed since she fell asleep and quietly accepts that her parents are likely gone now. Hearing this, Media holds her and reflects on how painful it must have been to grow up so young with no one to rely on. She suddenly brightens and firmly suggests that Iris should come live with them. Iris hesitates and politely refuses, saying she cannot accept food and shelter on top of having her life saved. The woman insists that is not the case and teasingly points out that even Luke wants Iris to stay. Luke realizes his plan to convince his mother has somehow flipped around. Iris smiles softly and is invited to become their daughter. The woman excitedly suggests sending a letter to Patrick, confident he will agree right away. Iris looks up and calls her madam. Media encourages Iris to call her mother. Iris hesitates before speaking as she tries to voice the word. The woman hugs her tightly and declares her family without hesitation. Iris freezes in confusion as affection surrounds her. Luke gently advises her to simply accept it. Gran reassures her that this new status is not a burden but a protection she deserves. He then calmly suggests regrouping at the inn later, hinting that there are still things to talk about. The woman happily agrees and pulls Iris close. The group parts ways with gratitude. Luke quietly reflects on how strange it feels for a friend's daughter to suddenly become his sister. He rests under the thought that for now everyone is safe. The next day, Iris and Luke arrive at the door together and apologize for being late. Yumi's voice calls out their tardiness. She and Gran sit at the table waiting, their attention turning serious as the conversation is about to begin. Everyone settles around the table. Luke asks directly what the discussion is meant to address. Gran immediately confronts him about interfering with the barrier and demands to know where such a technique came from. Luke admits the truth is important to him and proposes an exchange that requires a solemn promise. Yumi accepts without hesitation and swears earnestly that she will not reveal anything. Luke calmly exposes the lie and reveals he had already set up a spell to detect dishonesty. He suggests verifying things properly when she claims she feels no magic at work. He tests her with casual questions, each answer piling up into a clear pattern of falsehoods. He tells her that every response so far has been a lie from the very beginning. Yumi freezes in shock. She hesitates as she admits the magic was real, but insists she never meant for it to spread. Yumi explains that adventurers have a responsibility to report dangerous matters to the guild master. He calmly acknowledges her feelings while making it clear that concealment is not an option if lives are at risk. Gran reminds her that underestimating the boy as ordinary is a serious mistake. Yumi softens and admits she barely knows Luke and confesses that she only wanted to understand his character better. He accepts the apology with ease as he senses she's telling the truth. They discuss whether the incident must be reported despite attempts to keep it quiet. She carefully asks about his ability to use contract magic and wonders if he can teach her. She quickly withdraws the request and admits altering magic is itself a troubling matter to report. He points out that silence would make reporting impossible and asks Gran if that compromise is acceptable. Gran admits he never planned to tell anyone and jokes that strictly following guild rules would be pointless given the outcome, as Luke reflects that they are just a carefree pair as he first thought. He checks if Iris is fine with the decision, and she gently defers the choice to Luke without hesitation. With everyone aligned, Luke begins forming a contract as magic gathers around his hand. He formally declares the terms to all parties, binds the secret between himself and Iris, and forbids any disclosure as the spell takes hold. The magic coils around Yumi as the contract takes hold. The spell completes as the agreement is sealed before their eyes. Luke settles back and prepares to explain everything plainly, despite expecting disbelief. He reveals that he and Iris are ancient demons. Gran and Yumi sit stunned in silence. Yumi blurts out, unsure whether disbelief or restraint is the proper response to what she is hearing. Luke hesitates and admits he does not even know what a normal reaction should look like. He bluntly points out that from their perspective, the situation already sounds like something straight out of legends. Yumi pushes back and says she is still researching and that ancient demons sound more like distorted myths than reality. Pressed for proof, Luke admits the question is difficult to answer. He presents his ability to alter spells as tangible evidence. Yumi falters under the proof. Gran admits he thought Luke was unusual but never imagined something as extreme as an ancient demon. He then reasons that noble lineage should leave records and questions how such a claim could exist without proof. Luke acknowledges the doubt and quietly reflects that reincarnation is a demonic concept he now has to somehow explain. He realizes the question he asked earlier carries far more weight now. He recalls her answer about rebirth. She calmly explains her understanding of rebirth as a circulating soul. The thought lingers that demons vanished long ago, making such knowledge almost impossible to inherit. He clarifies that he himself is not an ancient demon. He reveals that he was reborn from an ancient demon into a human body. The others react in shock as the idea of rebirth becomes undeniable rather than theoretical. He admits his past death and reveals that he and Iris already knew each other before this life. He says their meeting in the ruins was no coincidence. Gran turns to Iris and she gently denies lying about revenge and that she truly lost someone precious to her. She explains that the person she lost is Luke. She reveals that Luke was once her father's friend. Luke took great care for her after freeing time from his duties. Luke listens in silence as Iris admits her deep admiration for him. Iris adds that the era they lived in was one of constant war. She recalls brutal battles where no one could escape, with Luke always at the center. She confesses that she chose revenge against the world that killed him. She continues by explaining that she was captured mid-revenge and sealed inside a device within the ruins until awakening much later. Gran acknowledges the circumstances and apologizes for ever doubting her story. Iris admits that what she said in the ruins was not a lie, though it did not fully reflect the whole truth. She expresses gratitude for being forgiven as Yumi cuts in. Yumi accepts the revelation of ancient demons, but hesitates over the implication that Iris once served Luke. The idea of one ancient demon serving another unsettles her, as she struggles to reconcile the hierarchy. Luke calmly confirms the suspicion, explaining that in his past he commanded all demons beneath him. He reveals that in his previous life, he was the 100th Demon King. The room falls silent as the weight of the revelation sinks in around the table. Luke calmly redirects the focus away from titles and insists that what truly matters is that they were ancient demons. His attempt to downplay the revelation only makes Yumi more flustered. She blurts out her shock, clearly shaken by how serious and world-changing the truth sounds. Iris firmly confirms that Luke truly was the Demon King. She excitedly recounts one of Luke's legendary feats and describes a mountain destroyed in battle as proof of his power. Gran cuts in to steer the conversation back on track. He asks why Luke chose to reveal such a dangerous truth in the first place. Luke answers simply that he wanted honesty and a chance to live openly without deception. He reflects that despite being a reincarnated Demon King, his current life as a powerless child leaves him unable to act freely. He tells them he has grown attached to village life and wants time to quietly gather knowledge about the outside world. Gran asks directly if that means they are being asked to serve as a bridge to the outside. He clarifies with a loud and awkward example that he wants visits and contact rather than a formal connection. He adds that these visits might help him find future companions. He responds calmly that a lack of deep knowledge does not bother him at all. He admits he mostly just wants to talk with different people from time to time and asks if that is acceptable. Gran scratches his head and notes that the honesty is not wrong but surprisingly blunt. He starts to agree before hesitating as he searches for the right words. He reminds them that, as adventurers, they cannot come frequently without some form of compensation. Luke listens closely as Gran proposes, setting a clear condition. Gran leans forward with a confident grin and proposes that Luke join their clan. The idea confuses both kids as he explains that a clan is simply a shared organization for adventurers. He breaks it down by explaining how multiple parties gather under one clan without strict command. He makes an example of adventurers teaching each other skills and knowledge while growing stronger together. Luke raises the issue of age limits, and Gran clarifies that this is something to consider once he turns 14. Gran laughs and admits they are not part of any clan yet as Luke asks which one they expect to join. Gran declares they will form their own clan when the time comes. Luke pauses to think and realizes the offer is sincere and meant to help him grow rather than control him. After a brief moment of resolve, he accepts the proposal. Gran reaches out and seals the agreement with a firm handshake and a clear condition tied to future registration. The agreement settles as they part, with Gran being confident that the clan they plan will one day become something well known. Iris smiles brightly and imagines the day she will stand as a full adventurer years from now. Luke answers her with quiet certainty. He pauses and gently calls out to her. He admits his desire to understand why he was reborn as a human and what became of the world after the hero's victory. Luke asks her to accompany him on a journey to uncover that truth. Iris accepts without hesitation and promises to accompany him everywhere. Luke adds that they must first speak honestly with the family and villagers. He cannot help but wonder how his family will truly react once they realize he is leaving. The moment is interrupted when Media cheerfully calls out to them. Their mother's confusion echoes at the table. She freezes mid-bite as the idea of him leaving the village hits her all at once. His expression turns to worry as Media struggles to speak. She smiles gently and admits she has always felt like he belonged somewhere beyond the village. He listens quietly, realizing his past thoughts may have shown on his face. She reassures him that she accepts it, but she's not sure about his father. Iris tilts her head in concern as he asks what kind of person their father is. Luke reassures her that their father has a quiet strength and strictness when it comes to swordsmanship. Media suggests fighting with a sword to convince him. Iris watches him closely, thinking about how he still feels like an ordinary child despite everything. She gently accepts that he truly was born and raised in this household. A shadowed memory surfaces as regret from the past lingers heavily. In the kitchen, Iris asks about her cooking, while Media explains her role and pride in caring for the household. Luke receives his lunch with ease and gratitude. She cheerfully reminds Luke about his usual activities for the day. She suggests introducing Iris to the others, and Luke readily agrees without hesitation. Iris is surprised when she is handed a lunchbox of her own. She tries to insist on helping with chores, but Media warmly brushes it off. Iris quietly absorbs the kindness as she is sent off with a simple wish to enjoy the day. Luke introduces Iris to the group and declares that she is now part of their family. He points out 3 children as his longtime friends and names them. Iris observes that Luke blends so naturally among humans. Rust nervously steps forward and offers a greeting. A dark memory surfaces of adults pulling children away in fear and warning them never to approach a demon. Time passes in a blur as centuries slip by and the world slowly reshapes itself. Iris reflects that the present era is nothing like the distant past, just like Luke said. A simple handshake bridges the gap between past prejudice and present understanding. Iris pauses in quiet surprise. She notices Yuri and May staring furiously at her. Iris quietly wonders whether people in this era still carry hatred toward demons, while reassuring herself that most of the truth has already faded. Luke calls Rust out for sword practice as the tension rises. Rust dashes off enthusiastically and leaves the girls to themselves. Iris hesitates and lingers. The 2 girls look at Iris as she wonders aloud if they're mad at Rust for them to be glaring at him. They pause in silence and exchange looks. One of them bluntly points out that Iris seems oblivious to Rust's obvious blushing. May mutters that Rust was blushing hard because of Iris. Yuri worries that if this keeps up, Rust might seriously fall for her. She apologizes awkwardly and suggests that if Iris has no interest, Rust should not be led on. Iris giggles after their words sink in. May tells her this is a serious matter, which makes her nervous. Iris explains that she thought she might have been a bit oblivious. She apologizes to Rust and admits her heart already belongs to someone else. The 2 girls lean in with mischievous grins, clearly eager to hear the full story behind her confession. Iris tells them that the person she likes is older than her and clarifies that Rust is out of the picture. Yuri presses for details and asks just how much older he might be. She wonders aloud if it was far more than a few decades. The girls panic as they realize the man Iris likes is technically an adult and praise her maturity while freaking out. They spiral into shock at the implications, thinking it could only be Gran or Patrick. The girls rally around Iris with bright smiles and acknowledge the difficulty of her feelings while promising their full support. Iris is caught off guard by their words, yet quietly accepts them. She realizes she gave a vague answer without thinking. Iris reflects on how long it has been since she last shared a conversation like this with friends. Memories surface of her past companions joking about boys and unspoken feelings she once struggled to understand. One of them teasingly presses her about whether she likes someone. Iris remembers her confusion back then, unsure whether what she felt was affection or something deeper. Before she could ever figure it out, that past was torn away and left her separated forever from her friends and family. She snaps back to the present as she is called out. Her friends wave her over warmly as they urge her to stop overthinking and come along with them. Iris pauses as she walks. She smiles quietly to herself and acknowledges that these are her first human friends. The 3 girls start moving together. Iris blinks and steadies her breath. Her thoughts settle on Luke as she reflects that the most important person is already close to her. She lifts her hand and decides to do everything she can this time, so she will have no regrets. The girls watch the boys training as one of them recalls how unexpectedly she was shaken by Luke's actions. Iris immediately asks what she means. Yuri and May excitedly recount how the giants were taken down and dramatize the event while laughing it off. They speculate about his strength and credits it to his lineage and own hard work. Iris hears that Luke has been taking a lunchbox every morning while training hard. Back in the kitchen, Iris hesitates as she gathers her courage. She calls out to her mother, who pauses and turns toward her with mild surprise. Iris struggles to speak while Media gently asks what is wrong. Iris finally steels herself and asks her for a favor she has clearly been rehearsing. Media clasps her hands and openly wonders what kind of request could be coming from Iris. Her excitement grows as she frames it as a heartfelt moment. Iris immediately flusters and denies any dramatic meaning. She gently acknowledges the timing and asks if it's truly okay to be her daughter. Media bends down with concern as she senses that Iris might be troubled by the idea. Realizing Iris has lost her parents and how much time has passed, Media pulls her into a protective embrace. She admits that seeing Iris like this made her genuinely want to become her mother. Iris freezes in shock, overwhelmed by the depth of that feeling. Media explains that she simply wanted to give Iris support and a place she could always come back to. She promises with sincerity that she truly wants to give Iris that kind of home. Iris blushes when Media brings up Luke. Media explains that it comes from how deeply Iris cares for him. She reflects that when Iris first woke in this world, the very first person she noticed was Luke. She sensed Iris held special feelings for Luke from the beginning. Even without formal adoption, Iris worries about her place and whether she is expected to act like a servant. Media pauses and softens. She explains that together with Luke, She wanted to create a place where Iris could truly belong. Iris listens in silence as she realizes her idea of family has always been complicated and distant. She recalls a past life where Luke and his family stood apart as figures to be revered. Media reacts with warm surprise as she notices Iris. Iris breaks down into tears even as she tries to explain herself. Media gently comforts Iris while reminding her that she has not yet shared the true reason she came here. Iris shyly admits that she wanted to learn how to cook. Iris explains that she learned a little long ago and hoped to improve so she could make food for her dear brother. She confesses that she wanted to learn properly so she could cook for him. Media lights up instantly. She enthusiastically agrees to teach Iris and treats the request with excitement. Iris panics in embarrassment when the conversation suddenly veers into talk of siblings and marriage. Laughing it off, Media refocuses on food and promises to teach Iris her cooking secrets. Iris listens as she is told that Luke's affection might come from seeing her like a little sister, and she quietly reflects on her place as only a friend's daughter. Iris realizes this situation might actually be working in her favor and steels herself with shy determination. Both Iris and her mother cheer each other on and promise to do their best together. Iris starts to stir the cooking pot as she starts a new conversation. She suddenly asks Media how she met her father. Media smiles thoughtfully and begins recalling how she first met Patrick around 15 years ago. Iris reacts in surprise when she hears that her mother was once a priestess at the time. Media casually explains that she used to be an itinerant priestess. It was back when the final religion established its importance even in the present era. She explains that although her rank was low, she was welcomed everywhere as a traveling priestess. Iris learns that Media once lived a life filled with duty and constant work. She recalls that priestesses were once feared holy figures who wielded sacred power to destroy evil without hesitation. She wonders how she never sensed that kind of overwhelming presence from her mother. Media admits that it feels embarrassing to talk about as she begins recounting the past. That journey turned dangerous when she was suddenly attacked by monsters along a mountain road. She recalls how guards tried to protect her, but the monster's strength left her cornered and terrified. She wondered if this was where her life would end. Just as despair peaked, a man charged in and cut through the threat in a single motion. The sudden silence left her stunned as she tried to process what just happened. Patrick turned back calmly and checked on her condition. She felt her heart skip as she looked up at him in awe. She remembers how his rough manner contrasted with the warmth she suddenly felt inside. At that moment, she realized she was already certain this man would become her husband. Media laughs and explains that it was never a matter of wanting, only knowing. She recalls how she thanked him and asked where he came from before parting ways. She then requested to be transferred to a church near his workplace. She gently explains that loving someone means choosing effort long before anything else. She recalls Patrick in his younger days, admired as a promising knight who drew attention wherever he went. Women would gather near the fortress where he worked and leave gifts behind in hopes they might reach him. She realized that beneath the praise and attention, he was still just an ordinary knight. The gifts piled up endlessly, and Patrick would just give them away to other soldiers, so she decided to give him something sincere that would not trap him in admiration alone. She approached a guard directly. She asked him to give the food she prepared to Patrick as a token of gratitude. She tells Iris that when the container was returned, a letter came with it that changed everything. She received a note where he thanked her and suggested spending time together, which made Iris quietly hope it might work for her too. She nervously asks Media if that plan would also work on her older brother, and Media reassures her that he is quite similar to Patrick. She gently asks whether it's the reason that Iris wants to try cooking herself. Iris smiles and admits that it is. Media happily agrees to teach her special cooking techniques that Luke likes. Iris smiles to herself as she looks down at a neatly packed basket filled with food. She confirms that she made the food with help from her mother while Luke happily eats beside her. She explains she adjusted the seasoning based on later advice, earning praise for the taste. Luke talks about becoming an adventurer so he can gather ingredients himself and cook dishes from demon territories. Luke smiles and asks if it would be alright for her to help him if that time ever comes. Iris beams as she answers yes without hesitation. Luke decides to continue training as Iris notes how unusually motivated he seems today. Luke agrees and reflects that tomorrow is the day he's been waiting for. A carriage arrives in the distance, carrying his father's return. Luke approaches him, and Patrick greets him casually after a long time apart. He looks at Luke with a gentle smile. Luke hesitantly asks if he will be able to stay for a long time, and Patrick explains that his visit will be short. He reassures Luke that even so, he has enough time to train both Luke and Rust. Luke admits that Rust seems especially exhausted lately and asks Patrick to remind him not to push himself too hard. Patrick senses something is wrong, and Luke promises to fill him in with the details. As they walk together, Patrick brings up Media and asks how she is. Luke mentions that she is currently at home with Iris. Patrick recalls reading a letter about Iris becoming their adopted daughter and wonders aloud why such a thing came to be. He directly asks Luke how he feels about it, and Luke says that he does not mind at all. He tells his father that Iris is polite and well-behaved. Patrick starts to tease him about Iris as Luke firmly denies it and insists she is family. He notes mentally that his father would never know that Iris is still only a friend's daughter. Patrick explains that by the kingdom's laws, siblings without blood ties are allowed to marry. Luke mutters that the issue is not legality. Patrick realizes that the chance of marriage feels slim because Luke already sees Iris as a real sister. They finally reach home and announce their arrival. Media welcomes him back warmly with Iris and the maids. Patrick greets Media with relief and concern, but she brushes it off and says she is doing fine. Patrick turns his attention to Iris and confirms her identity while she nervously answers him. He thanks Iris for the food she made and suggests they go inside to talk properly. Inside, the conversation shifts to magic tools as plates of food are served. Luke listens quietly as the adults discuss how magic tools circulate among powerful nobles. He reflects that asking Gran for help was the right choice, even as he realizes how much of his father's stories were softened for a child's ears. He admits that, with his father being a knight, the deeper truths are complex and not something that can easily be grasped. Patrick gently brings up the contents of Media's letter. She wonders if the letter was about wanting to take Iris in as a daughter, charmed by how adorable she is. Patrick answers warmly and agrees that Iris seems like a good and well-mannered child. He notes with relief that Iris and Luke already appear to get along naturally. Iris thanks him politely at the table, earning praise for her good manners. Luke smiles as Patrick promises to submit the adoption forms once he returns to the royal capital. Then he grows quiet and concerned. He hesitantly brings up a serious talk with his father. Patrick invites him to explain what is on his mind. Luke declares that when he turns 14, he wants to become an adventurer. Patrick accepts the idea at first and notes their noble status while hinting that it comes with complications. He explains that even as an adventurer, Luke can still inherit the family, and that alternatives exist if things become difficult. He clasps his hands and warns that the path of an adventurer is far harsher than it sounds. Luke listens intently as his father proposes a challenge to test his resolve. Patrick sets the condition that by Luke's 14th birthday, he must match his swordsmanship. A smile forms on Luke's lips. Patrick finishes with a chilling reminder that without that strength, Luke would not survive the life of an adventurer. Luke accepts the challenge and reflects how Patrick is invoking the same fierce determination from those who challenged him in his past life. He declares that by his 14th birthday he will become a swordsman worthy of his father's recognition. Patrick smiles with pride and affirms his belief that his son will grow strong. Their parents laugh together as Media promises to prepare lunch for both of them tomorrow. Iris smiles with relief as he shares that he is glad for now. He raises a hand and admits there are still many gaps in his swordsmanship and physical strength that need work. He reflects further that his magic control has not returned to what it once was, yet he steels himself for the challenges ahead as the next day arrives. Training begins with a fierce clash of wooden swords, both Rust and Luke straining against each other. Luke finds an opening and drives through with precision, forcing Rust back to block it. Luke questions whether his pace can be matched, while Rust grins proudly at his improvement. Patrick has drilled Rust relentlessly over the past few days, and the results show in faster movements. He admits his counters are still lacking despite that progress, and Luke offers to teach him. Iris watches quietly from a distance. She notes that Luke continues refining modern swordsmanship with Rust and secretly practices magic whenever he is alone. Even though his life is calmer now than when he was the Demon King, Iris reflects that reincarnation has not erased who he truly is. She smiles softly and hesitates. Watching him swing his weapon, she realizes he genuinely looks happier than before. Still, Iris feels uneasy doing nothing herself and questions her place. She snaps out of her thoughts when a voice gently calls her name. The two girls rush up to Iris and call out excitedly as they ask her for a favor. The two girls nervously gather their courage and ask Iris to become their mentor together. Iris freezes in surprise as she repeats the word. She panics and misunderstands at first, only to be quickly corrected that they mean combat training. Iris hesitates as the girls explain they want help learning how to fight. Yuri admits she tried to stop Rust from becoming an adventurer, but he refuses to give up. May adds that at this rate Rust will leave the village, so they decided to become adventurers too. Iris realizes they need combat training if they plan to follow that path. The girls explain they talked it over with Luke a few days ago and came to this decision together. Luke reacts in shock when he hears that both of them want to be adventurers as well. They insist they are fine with the danger and plan to stick with Rust, so he will not go alone. May clasps her hand as she explains that training is necessary. Luke considers it and reasons that Patrick likely would train them, though they should aim for more than sword practice. He proposes the idea of training mid-range support. He clarifies that a support role using magic or backing up allies from afar would make sense. He explains that strengthening formations gives the front line more freedom, while close combat remains Rust's strength. He tells them that they understand Rust better than anyone. That leads them to decide to ask Iris. Since she is knowledgeable in magic and strong in her own right, Iris accepts the idea but warns that her methods are unusual. When told the training will be intense, the two respond without hesitation and fully prepared for it. They tell her that harsher training is exactly what they want. Iris questions their determination and Yuri tells her it's because they want to stay with Rust. They explain that Rust just runs straight to anything that catches his interest. Iris perks up in surprise when Yuri starts to tear up. Yuri recalls what happened back in the ruins. Back then they could only hide behind Rust while fear completely took over. The girls admit that if something like that happened again, they would only become a burden now. They explain that this is why simply following Rust around is no longer enough. Iris realizes their resolve as they declare they want to become strong enough to protect him instead. A vision flashes of Iris unleashing magic in frustration and wishing that she were stronger. Iris tells them she understands the desire to protect someone precious. She accepts their request without hesitation but pauses to add that there is still something important to say. She promises that since they asked for the harshest training, she will hold nothing back. The two girls smile at her with determination. They eagerly grab Iris's hands as they beg her to take them on as students. As the sun dips, Rust and Luke walk as they admit they are learning bit by bit, even if mastery is still far away. They both agree there is no need to rush and decide to rest for now. Their calm is broken when a sharp voice suddenly cuts through. From across the clearing, Iris harshly scolds the girls for letting their guard down while enemies could strike at their weakest. She reminds them that carelessness puts everyone in danger. The two boys freeze in shock and disbelief. Iris steps forward and drives home the brutal lesson that hesitation in battle leads only to death. The boys mutter to themselves as they listen to Iris once more. Luke recognizes her technique from a figure in his past life, which explains how she became so strong in only a few years. Both boys agree to keep pushing themselves and practice more before heading back. Luke reminds himself that this is not the time to rest because the years ahead will pass faster than he expects. On the day he finally turns 14, he gathers in the forest with his family. Media and Iris stand together as they watch the boys and smile at the view. Patrick steps forward and makes it clear he has been waiting for this moment. Luke grips his wooden sword and faces him head-on. He affirms his resolve and answers Patrick without hesitation. Patrick calmly lays out the rules for their final match and emphasizes that this will be a pure test of swordsmanship without magic. Patrick reminds him that experience still creates a clear gap despite his growth. To make things fair, Patrick explains that he is suppressing his strength, so the match will be evenly balanced. Luke accepts the condition and agrees that the outcome should depend on skill alone. He reflects that mastering modern swordsmanship is his way of keeping his true power hidden for the future. He knows this test would mean nothing if he relied on anything other than his blade. Patrick meets his gaze in agreement with a small smile. Patrick praises how far Luke has come and hints at the heights ahead. Luke answers without doubt and makes it clear that surpassing Patrick has always been his goal. Patrick calmly speaks about succession and legacy while realizing he never expected such resolve from his son. He follows up by admitting that if his son truly plans to take over someday, the burden of finding a successor no longer weighs on him. But he says he is not ready to leave his role yet because he still has a wife to care for. Luke acknowledges the weight of that responsibility while clearly respecting it. He says he also has a sister who sticks by him. Luke admits he cannot afford to lose either. With a calm grip on his wooden sword, Patrick signals the start of their long-awaited match. Luke raises his weapon, aware that his human body is still weaker than his past as the Demon King. He looks over at Patrick to try to predict his opening move but fails. Realizing he lacks enough information to react, Luke decides he must seize the initiative himself. He predicts the counter that will follow and commits fully to the first strike. Timing the exact moment, he adjusts his grip and channels everything into a single decisive motion. The two blades collide, the impact sharp enough to draw surprise from Patrick. Dust settles as they separate, Patrick openly impressed by Luke's change in approach. Luke calmly reminds Patrick of his own lesson about keeping hidden options. Luke reflects on how much thought he has put into his growth while pressing the exchange forward. Patrick blocks with ease and observes that Luke's foundations clearly come from his own teachings. Through the flow of combat, the philosophy behind that training is a methodical process of denying escape. The clash intensifies as the fight becomes a relentless pursuit rather than a simple exchange of blows. He notes his own teaching that no matter how far an opponent flees, the pressure never truly lifts. One must continue to chase until their prey is crushed. Luke moves with frightening focus, his expression revealing experience born from real battle rather than theory. Patrick reacts with a mix of disbelief and admiration as he realizes just how extraordinary Luke's instincts have become. Luke smirks as he realizes Patrick noticed it after just a few exchanges. He recalls his long combat history and explains how his old aggressive style was reshaped into a modern orthodox form through refinement. Patrick notes that altering swordsmanship to that degree is considered a high art and not something easily achieved. He acknowledges they are both pushing close to their limits. Patrick raises his sword for one final exchange, and Luke immediately recognizes the technique. He realizes the move's strength lies in its simplicity and surpasses what he or Rust can currently handle. Still, he steadies himself, confident that he has prepared a counter for this moment. Patrick lunges forward, boots digging into the ground as he closes the distance. Luke charges in as well and meets the advance head-on. The clash culminates in a decisive single strike as they both charge in. Luke slowly comes back to consciousness. He realizes he is in a lively tavern, surrounded by laughing patrons and overflowing mugs. Iris sits beside him with a gentle smile, relieved to see that he has finally woken up. Luke asks why he is there, and Iris explains that it is because of his earlier fight with their father. She calmly reminds him that he lost the match and passed out afterward. The decisive moment replays in his mind as he recalls being struck down by the single blade technique. Luke calmly accepts the result and admits to himself that he lost. He then wonders why there is a celebration when he was clearly defeated. Iris gently tells him that their battle was not about winning or losing. She reflects that even though Rust and the others were defeated by Patrick, they still set out on their journey only a few months ago. Luke pauses as the realization settles in. The banquet is revealed as a send-off for his journey. The focus shifts to Patrick, who begins recounting memories. His parents laugh together while proudly recalling his childhood and expressing confidence in the strength he would grow into. The siblings watch with mixed amusement and disbelief as the storytelling continues without signs of slowing down. She shrugs it off and notes that drunken behavior never really changes with time. The image of Luke and her father drinking together comes to mind. The night winds down with some guests already asleep. Media calls Luke as Iris sleeps on his shoulder. She approaches with a warm smile and praises him for how far he has come. She notices Iris and asks if she is interrupting, while he explains he was about to wake her. The sudden noise startles Iris awake, her shock turning into flustered embarrassment. Media suggests returning home so she could sleep as Iris apologizes to Luke. Luke tries to excuse himself, but Patrick suddenly approaches. Patrick slings an arm around him with a grin and jokes about the star leaving early. The girls decide to head back first as they exchange warm farewells. The boys wave and wish them to take care. Patrick checks on Luke and he answers with an easy smile that he feels fine now. Luke admits he wanted a clearer victory from the test. Patrick turns serious and questions why Luke held back during the fight. Patrick bursts into laughter and brushes aside the sudden seriousness. He tells Luke not to look so shocked. Luke chuckles and says it's because he said weird things. Patrick speculates loudly that Luke cannot fight seriously because he deliberately keeps certain things hidden. Luke looks up in worry as he wonders how much his father has already pieced together. He apologizes and admits he never meant to hide the truth forever. Patrick acknowledges that it was himself who taught Luke the importance of knowing when to hold back. He then admits he expected Luke to go all out in their final match. Luke notes that his father knows he is hiding strength, but not the true nature of it. He reflects that he did fight at full strength under the rules, since using magic was forbidden. He concludes that he can continue misleading his father for now. He reflects that it is rare to see his father show so much emotion and trusts that even if the truth comes out, it will not be spread recklessly. He smiles and suggests another fight now. He proposes that this time he will fight with everything he has. Patrick questions whether Luke truly means it, while Luke calmly insists. Luke demands that if they fight again, Patrick must also hold nothing back. Patrick clarifies that even today, he did not fully let loose. Luke explains that the rematch should involve both of them using magic, without any tools suppressing their strength. Patrick stiffens and wonders if Luke is deliberately mocking him. Luke meets that intensity head-on as Patrick echoes the idea of going all out against a 14-year-old. Luke states that unless his father fights seriously, he will not be able to go all out either and proposes a secret match at dawn before his departure. After a long pause and visible hesitation, Patrick finally accepts the challenge. He warns that if they go through with this, he will not hold back and tells him not to complain if he gets hurt and delayed. Luke calmly answers back that those words belong to him. The tension breaks as Patrick laughs it off and agrees that under those terms he cannot refuse. He promises to show Luke the full power of the kingdom's top swordsman. The next day, a coin spins through the air as Luke flicks it upward to signal the start. Patrick watches with curiosity as Luke explains the coin will decide when the match begins. The coin rests in his palm, while Patrick tells him to throw it whenever he is ready. Luke acknowledges his father's confidence. He accepts the challenge outright. Red energy coils around his body as he declares he will take his father up on the offer and fight seriously. Patrick stares in disbelief as he admits he didn't anticipate Luke's power. Luke admits it's not his full power yet. He clarifies that he's not holding back, but rather he cannot control it fully yet. Patrick admits he doesn't fully understand but acknowledges Luke's seriousness. Luke agrees that it's time to start the match as he lifts the coin. He tosses it up into the air as their second match begins. The coin drops as both of them launch forward at the same instant. Patrick smiles in genuine surprise as he realizes the gap between them is far smaller than he expected. Luke admits even he did not anticipate how close they now stand. Luke tightens his grip and commits to ending the exchange in a single decisive strike. He dashes back and forces his father to brace and read the attack. Luke prepares to launch another strike. Patrick recognizes the thrust and prepares to evade. He stops himself mid-thought, realizing dodging will only invite a faster follow-up. Accepting he cannot match Luke's current speed, he resolves to knock the blade aside instead. Luke notices the choice instantly and praises the decision to meet him head-on. He presses forward without slowing, knowing that hesitation would give Patrick the opening he wants. Patrick immediately knocks Luke's sword away as he approaches. He smiles in confidence as he believes the clash has already secured his victory. Luke answers by unleashing a darker strength, overturning that certainty with calm resolve. In a violent sweep, he sends Patrick crashing down behind him. He stands over him and claims the victory for himself. The moment passes into exhaustion as Luke struggles forward while supporting his knocked-down father. He reflects on how long he has been steadily increasing his magic output since childhood. That growth proves necessary when his father's unexpected strength forces him to push far beyond his usual limits. The cost becomes clear as intense muscle pain racks his body after the battle ends. Even while carrying his father, he questions whether enduring this backlash again and again is truly unavoidable. His thoughts drift to the heroes in the past and remembers how they once surpassed their limits and overcame even the strongest demons. He admires how remarkable their efforts were and wishes to one day reach that same level. He looks up in surprise as Iris greets him. She steps forward with a warm smile and asks how the match turned out. He notes that she must have noticed the magic he used before calmly telling her that he won, although not flawless. He adds that if they fought again, he would win without a doubt. Iris reacts with surprise as Luke admits how strong Patrick was. Iris tells him that it's strange to hear him praising an opponent. He tells her that Patrick would have been a really good match against Bacchus. Iris processes this comparison and understands it. Patrick stirs weakly and asks where he is. As he regains consciousness, Patrick realizes that this meant he lost the match. He stands up on his own and admits he didn't expect to be defeated by his own child. He immediately stumbles before regaining his footing. Luke gently warns him not to overdo it and notes how much magic Patrick used. He turns in surprise when Iris reveals she noticed their early departure that morning. She explains she waited at the village entrance for their return as she calmly pieced together what happened. Patrick asks if she knows about Luke's strength, and she admits having glimpsed it firsthand. Patrick sighs in relief and trusts that the two of them will manage the path of adventurers together. He offers firm advice that strength alone cannot solve everything and reminds them to rely on others when needed. He reassures them that people close to them will always be there to help when the time comes. Luke smiles and silently confirms that he understands the lesson. With his past memories, he reminds himself that if raw strength were enough, simple alliances would have solved everything. But he knows that the world is far more cruel and complicated than that. He accepts the advice with Iris beside him, while Patrick watches them with quiet reassurance. Patrick turns away and urges them to return home to prepare for the journey ahead. Iris and Luke glance at each other with determined smiles. The three of them walk together down the village road as the sun rises. Later, a carriage waits nearby. Villagers gather and watch with smiles. Media and Patrick stand together as they call their two children. Luke and Iris face forward together as the moment to leave arrives at last. Villagers remark that the pair are not heading toward war, but acknowledge that word of their departure will spread quickly. The parents reassure them that they trust the discipline that raised Luke and have never truly worried about him. Media softens and admits that even so she is proud of how much both of them have grown. She pulls Luke into an embrace and asks them to be careful and look after each other on the road. Iris shares a warm hug with her and promises to return if anything happens while entrusting Luke to her care. Patrick explains he will remain behind a little longer before returning to the capital and tells them to travel safely. A man steps forward to announce that it is nearly time to depart. Luke readies himself as he looks at Iris. From the village road, the family and townspeople stand together, watching the carriage roll away in silence. Inside the carriage, Luke reflects that this is the first time he has ever been the one being sent off. Iris points out that he never had the chance to travel back then. It was Bacchus who was rarely around because he was always traveling. Iris asks if they can discuss the route they're going to take again. Luke calmly explains that their first destination is the capital, passing through several villages and stopping midway at Cadus village on a journey that will take about a week. Iris confirms the plan to register as adventurers once they arrive, and Luke agrees. Another thought surfaces that before visiting the Adventurers Guild, it might be better to meet Gran and the others at the clan's base first. Iris cheerfully agrees and notes that Rust and the rest should still be there as well. She wonders aloud if the others have grown stronger over the past few months, and whether they have mastered their magic. Luke adds that he also wants to look into weapons and antiques, prompting Iris to ask what he is searching for. Luke admits he has some research to do. He then reveals that the item he carries is a prototype he is working on and asks Iris if she recognizes what it is. Luke carefully examines a compact, ornate firearm and explains that it resembles a magic cannon. Iris identifies it as a portable magic gun designed for people who cannot naturally use magic. Luke confirms her guess and explains that he repurposed parts salvaged from an ancient magic machine discovered in old ruins. He then presents another weapon and casually asks for her thoughts. Iris studies it closely and wonders aloud if it is already a completed prototype. She notes that its structure differs from common magic tools, but Luke denies it. He admits that he did not create that one himself and explains that it was obtained from a traveling merchant. Iris is visibly shocked that someone else could make such a weapon in an era where most people struggle to even handle magic machines. Luke reflects on how humans and demons of the past advanced their civilizations too far, escalating warfare to unnecessary extremes. He adds that although development has stagnated in the present era, dangerous technologies still surface, even ones he does not fully understand. Iris finally understands his motivation for researching these weapons. Luke suggests testing the strange weapon, and Iris hesitates before agreeing. She focuses and pours magic into the weapon, but nothing activates. She explains that the magic is flowing properly and the device feels intact, yet it still refuses to function. Luke admits that even Iris cannot make it work and says he has already dismantled and studied it without understanding why. He notices that they have only just left the village, yet a major mystery has already appeared before them. Iris points out that despite the problem, Luke seems oddly relaxed and even amused. She reminds him that he has always enjoyed solving mysteries, even trivial ones from the past. A memory surfaces of Bacchus fuming over stolen alcohol, while Luke calmly hunted down the culprit. Luke quietly mentions Bacchus's name. He wonders what became of him after his death. Iris admits she does not truly know what happened afterward. She explains that she left her father's side to travel alone. She apologizes for bringing it up, but admits she believes his father may have survived. She reflects that her father was the type who would never fall easily, not even to an attempted assassination. Luke agrees with a gentle smile, admitting there is no way to know for sure, and hoping his father's final moments were peaceful as the carriage continues onward. The sound of wheels jolts as the driver calls out to wake them and announces they will stop at the next town. Luke and Iris respond together in agreement. Iris excitedly points ahead and tells Luke to look as something comes into view. Luke recognizes the sight immediately and realizes they have arrived at the fortress city of Final. Luke and Iris peer out at the sprawling city beyond the gate, struck by how vast it is. At the checkpoint, a guard steps forward and asks for their travel pass. The guard inspects their papers and gives a satisfied nod, formally welcoming them into the fortress city of Final as the carriage rolls through. Luke peers through the window as the wagon passes. One guard flashes a subtle and knowing thumbs up, while Luke returns the gesture and Iris smiles. Luke checks on Iris, curious whether she is enjoying the journey so far. Iris beams brightly, her smile making it clear that she is genuinely delighted. The carriage stops in a sunlit district where an inn rests. Luke notes how much nicer it is than expected and hears that the food here has a good reputation. He considers the idea of dinner, but remarks that it still feels a little too early to decide just yet. The two agree to explore the city first, sharing an easy excitement about wandering together. The driver warns them about the dangers of going out alone, but they argue that they're becoming adventurers anyway. The man quickly realizes they are more capable than they look and accepts that they will manage just fine. With a firm decision made to leave the next morning, they acknowledge the plan and prepare themselves. The two decide to head out right away and move together without hesitation. The city opens up into a lively marketplace and catches Iris's attention. She marvels at the trinkets and food on display, overwhelmed by how full and vibrant the city feels. As they walk side by side, the city feels calm and ordinary in a way that puts them both at ease. Luke explains that the fortress city is now simply a trade hub. He reveals that monsters once stayed away after an ancient dragon claimed the nearby mountains as its domain. Iris recalls the ancient dragon with a soft smile, remembering stories that paint it as the greatest and strongest of all monsters. She tells him about having seen such a being before. They move through the street as the thought of whether such creatures still exist today feels certain despite the changing era. Luke argues that the city is still thriving as a trade hub anyway. The peaceful moment breaks when Iris suddenly stiffens as someone bumps into her. A quick hand reaches for her belongings. Iris reacts instantly, twisting away from the kid. The kid immediately runs away as Luke recognizes this ugly scene all too well. They quietly acknowledge the unchanging gap between the rich and the poor. Memories surface of abandoned children and poverty, and of the imperfect attempts they once made to help. He shifts the topic thoughtfully, recalling how the church once played a major role in caring for orphans during that time. She hesitates as she explains that many of those saved children later became devoted followers or soldiers sent to the front lines. They reflect on how the church's intentions were uncertain yet may have spared children from dying in the streets. They note how the church now feels like a distant memory and how religious groups have become something entirely different. She wonders aloud why the church of that era no longer exists, and he admits that the answer remains unclear. He recalls the organization called the Church that preached salvation through heroes and the eradication of demons. They speculate that the church may have vanished along with the ancient demons or fractured when the heroes' factions split apart. He resolves that the truth will require further investigation, just as his attention is caught by a familiar structure in the distance. Curiosity pulls them toward the building as they agree to check it out together. They step through the doorway. Luke steps carefully and quietly. Iris calls out to him in alarm, both of them staring forward. His breath catches as they step inside. They freeze at the sight of a monument standing before the stained glass. The statue's face becomes unmistakably recognizable to them, and Luke can only call out Bacchus's name. Iris checks on Luke as he apologizes. He realizes he was the one most shaken and checks on Iris as well. She admits she was startled, but explains that seeing her father again still feels natural to her. The two share a light exchange that shows how deeply Iris understands her father's personality. Their attention returns to the statue as the question of why Bacchus would ever be immortalized lingers. Neither of them can find a convincing reason, even as they recall his odd but memorable nature. They agree that Bacchus was never the kind of person meant to be revered or worshipped. When asked about Bacchus after the war, Iris can only guess that he continued fighting somewhere far away. The silence settles in as they realize how little the past has truly given them. Luke's eyes widen as a sudden presence makes him tense, and alerts both of them at once. A robed figure approaches from the aisle and calmly closes the distance. The woman meets his gaze and reacts in mutual surprise. She kneels with deliberate care and rests a heavy sword against the floor before addressing them. She lifts her hood to reveal a sharp-eyed blonde priestess. Luke immediately recognizes the attire and notes the unusual weight and presence of the sword. The priestess politely offers help. Luke reassures her that nothing serious is wrong. He explains that this is his first time inside a church and admits feeling out of place compared to his village. The priest introduces herself as a missionary of the End faith who travels to rural areas to spread her teachings. The pair explain that they are heading to the capital and that their visit to the church was simply a coincidence. The priestess smiles gently and suggests that their meeting inside the church may not be a coincidence at all. Luke gestures toward the statue and admits he has been curious about the figure standing there. The priestess calmly explains that the statue depicts Apostle Bacchus, a savior revered in the teachings of the End faith. The revelation hits both Iris and her uncle at once as they struggle to process the idea of Bacchus being honored as a saint. Their shock is mutual, written plainly on their faces as the weight of the claim sinks in. Luke regains composure and asks what it truly means that Bacchus is said to have saved the world from chaos. The missionary hesitates but still offers to explain. She leads them to sit within the church and prepares them for what she is about to reveal. The tale begins as a passage from ancient End faith myths said to originate more than 3,000 years ago. According to the story, humanity once fought a brutal war against the ancient demons, led by a hero who journeyed alongside a mage and a sword master. The priestess begins recounting the legend with the moment meant to end the ancient demons by defeating their king. The story catches Luke off guard as the weight of the name sinks in. As the war escalated, a terrifying weapon emerged, one the hero tried and failed to destroy in time. When everything seemed lost, Bacchus suddenly appeared and joined the battle at the hero's side. According to the tale, Bacchus continued to support the hero and was later revered as a saint. The detail unsettles Luke, especially the idea of Bacchus standing firmly on the hero's side. He interrupts to question the story as he recalls that there was supposed to be a saintess among the hero's companions. The priestess pauses in visible shock. She admits there is no historical record of such a saintess ever existing. She asks where he would hear such a thing, which makes him falter. He reasons that his confusion likely came from another similar story, and the priestess lets the moment pass. She concludes the story and invites them to pray with her. She slowly steps towards the statue. She lowers her head in prayer and asks for Bacchus's blessing to guide the world. She offers a final blessing for both travelers on their journey. With a gentle smile, she excuses herself and Luke responds with gratitude. Her hand tightens around the hilt of her sword as she turns to leave. While the pair watch her go, the two exchange thoughts about the story they just heard, unsettled by how strange it all feels. Luke admits that history may have been distorted over time, yet something still feels off to him. Deciding they will not find answers here, they agree to head back to the inn together. They prepare to leave as Iris casually mentions that she is getting hungry. Luke smiles and jokes that if Bacchus were present, he would probably remind them not to forget the booze. Later that night, the priestess sits alone by a campfire. The fire talks to her and notes how interesting the two kids were. The priestess agrees and reflects on how they left for the capital, which is a complete opposite of her path. The fire reminds her that she could have stayed in the capital. She quietly acknowledges that there is something she must find. Prodded by a teasing inner voice, she argues that the answer is already known. She banters with the fire and frames its solitude as a consequence of its own choices. With a faint smile, she decides she will linger a little longer. A carriage rolls onward at dawn. Iris reflects that the church statue and its legend only deepen the mystery surrounding the father. They concede that the truth may be unclear, but simply learning these stories feels like a small victory. Still, unease lingers over the strange gaps in history, the missing saintess, and the ominous mention of a mysterious weapon. The priestess comes back to Luke's mind as he wonders what's up with her. He is snapped out of his thoughts when Iris urgently calls out to him. Iris excitedly points ahead and invites him to peer. His surprise turns into relief and awe as the vast capital city finally comes into view and marks their arrival at the capital. They share quiet excitement and nerves as they wonder if everyone they know is already waiting inside. The driver is suddenly caught off guard. Carriages line the road near the city walls and the heavy traffic suggests something unusual is happening today. A nun moves through the crowd and the driver calls her attention. She turns slightly and asks what he wants. Luke spots other adventurers nearby and excitedly wonders if they are as powerful as they look. The nun explains that the plaza is busy because an event has been scheduled. She reveals the event to be a public dissection of a defeated fire dragon. Hearing that such a powerful dragon was taken down leaves the driver stunned, especially at how casually it is being discussed. The nun clarifies that only top-tier adventurers could achieve something like that. The pair quietly listens as they learn about a notorious clan making waves in the capital and the attention surrounding its members. The driver politely expresses gratitude for the explanation and apologizes for taking up time. He offers a small token of thanks, which surprises her. She comments on how merchants operate these days while he explains that he simply takes care of his connections. Her sharp smile suggests she finds the exchange intriguing. She confidently introduces herself as Manaka of the Himeros clan and assures them that they can rely on her if they ever need help. She takes her leave with a confident smile while the driver cheerfully sees her off. She glances back with a knowing look and casually acknowledges the two watching from behind. Luke smiles and quietly watches her retreat. He remarks that Gran and the others seem to be doing well. Iris leans out the window to complain that the heavy traffic is their fault, and jokes that the event should have been postponed. Night falls as the carriage finally arrives at the inn. The driver explains he will depart the capital in the morning, and Luke thanks him sincerely for his help. Luke reflects on wanting to see the capital while admitting how late it has already become. Iris muses that demons once could not even step into human cities. The big cities were always protected by massive holy barriers, and any demon who entered before would have faced certain destruction. She notes how they can now walk freely. She grows pensive as she questions where that ancient human glory vanished. Luke shifts the focus to Bacchus and suggests the library might hold records that explain what history forgot. He decides that their first task tomorrow should be searching the library, but Iris reminds him of Gran's clan. She adds that they still need to secure an inn. He sheepishly admits he forgot, and Iris gently points out how easily he gets lost in his thoughts. Her warning about disappointing Gran and the others makes him visibly uneasy. He wonders if Gran and the rest are having fun without him. Iris carefully asks if he feels left out as she senses the silence he cannot quite voice. He finally admits that while others are off slaying fire dragons, he feels like he has been left behind. Iris laughs softly while Luke looks confused, and by her sudden amusement, she teases him affectionately, leaving him shocked and unsure how to respond. She apologizes and explains that she finally understands the way Bacchus used to tease him. She suggests with playful sincerity that he might be more similar to Bacchus than he realizes, even as he protests weakly. They both agree to postpone the library visit and instead see Gran and the others first the next day. Morning comes to the capital with tall buildings and busy streets. Luke hesitates while checking the way forward, then reassures himself as they continue walking together. Iris leans in to check the route more carefully. She points out a marked note on the map and admits it is the only guidance they have to work with. They walk side by side toward the library and agree that this was always where they planned to go anyway. He pauses in the street as recognition slowly sets in. Standing before it together, he confirms that this worn structure matches what they were looking for. His eyes perk up when something catches his attention. The sign confirms it as the headquarters of Elam, the Seekers of Time. From a distance, the building looks unstable and close to collapse, yet it still matches the description. When Iris examines it more closely, she senses layered magic woven into its structure despite the flaws. He notes that the magic feels imperfect but functional, and she agrees that it is sturdier than it appears. Deciding there is nothing more to debate, they agree to go inside together. He opens the door and reveals a quiet interior. He notes that the building only looks shabby from the outside. The shelves of bottles make it clear that the first floor functions like a tavern. As they wonder about Gran and the others, a hand reaches out from the counter and notices them as customers. A cheerful woman with braided hair and glasses appears and casually asks who they are. Luke hesitates and wonders if this lively woman is actually part of the clan. They explain that Gran and the others invited them and introduced themselves, which immediately rings a bell for her. She introduces herself as Chiffon and explains that she stays behind to keep watch and run the tavern. Luke thinks she seems scattered but capable and greets her properly with relief. They shake hands warmly as Luke's stomach growls. Chiffon laughs and points out that it sounds like they are already starving. She cheerfully offers to prepare food at once and invites them to sit wherever they like. She suddenly shifts into motion and confidently lays out fresh vegetables. Ingredients are sliced clean as casual conversation confirms they are the ones Gran mentioned. She flares up a pan and admits she expected them to look tougher. The finished dishes are placed in front of them with a warning about the heat as both stare in anticipation. Luke notes her unexpected efficiency and thanks her as he eagerly starts eating. The first bite hits and his expression freezes. He blurts out his amazement while Chiffon casually explains it is made from simple everyday ingredients. He realizes Gran has found a truly valuable addition to the group. Chiffon apologizes gently and explains that Gran and Rust are not here right now. She explains that Gran is tied up preparing for the Fire Dragon dissection show while Rust is away on a distant mission. She mentions that everyone would normally be eating together by now, but the timing shifted because they arrived earlier than expected. She pauses with a gentle smile. She tells that the timing works out since the tavern is closed for the day. Chiffon suggests that instead of waiting around, they all go watch the show together. Iris and Luke quickly agree, deciding it sounds fun enough to check out. Chiffon cheerfully tells them to follow her and warns that they should hurry if they want to arrive early. They notice how smoothly Chiffon moves and realizes she might be more capable than she looks. Luke admits she doesn't look like it at all. They arrive at a packed street filled with people gathering for the event. Chiffon tells them that dragons are already rare sights and witnessing one being dissected is even more unusual. She informs them that tickets were cheap but sold out fast, which turned the event into a major profit for the clan. Luke reacts to the news with concern since they arrived without tickets. Chiffon calmly reveals she already has the situation covered. She hands them VIP tickets and assures them they owe nothing. Luke accepts with gratitude. Seeing the illustration, he realizes Gran herself is responsible for dissecting the fire dragon. Iris asks why Yumi will not be on stage and learns Yumi is busy preparing protective barriers. Chiffon explains that dissection can get really messy. They approach the packed plaza surrounding the covered stage. Luke struggles to see anything through the dense crowd. Suddenly, a pair of hands creep into his shoulders and lifts him up. Chiffon excitedly asks if he can finally see the view while he stiffens in surprise. He confirms that the view is becoming clearer and asks to be put down. He reflects with mild disbelief on how effortlessly she had lifted him. The massive plaza is filled with a dense crowd gathered around the stage. They note that the plaza is completely packed and feel relieved that they arrived on time. Chiffon points out that the event is about to begin. Two figures step forward near the covered object as one of them begins addressing the crowd. The audience reacts with loud excitement. Gran points toward the cloth and introduces the fire dragon. He pulls the cloth away to reveal the enormous creature and explains that its size far exceeds what is normally expected. He strikes a dramatic pose and signals the official start of the Fire Dragon dissection show. Luke asks in disbelief how such a massive fire dragon was even brought here, and Chiffon explains they use spatial storage. The dead restrained dragon was dragged through a glowing portal owned by a trading company in the royal capital. Luke confirms if Iris no longer has access to storage of that scale, and she says that even military versions are now gone. She cheerfully points out how Luke crafted a bag-shaped storage item for her and reassures him it will still be useful. He admits it would have been easier if the storage were larger but points out that they currently lack the materials and skill to improve it. Gran announces that once the dissection ends, he plans to cook dragon stew, encouraging anyone interested in eating to stay. He grips his weapon and declares that he is about to begin cutting. The blade flashes as he swings down at the dragon's head. Luke notes how incredibly clean the sword's cut is. Chiffon tells him it's a rare Eastern blade called katana, said to be forged by master artisans who gather all their skill into its creation. She invites them to look closely at the dragon's severed head. She tells them how the sword passed through tough scales cleanly, allowing the material to be preserved without damage. A spectator flinches as blood splashes against a magical barrier in front of him. Nearby audience members recoil, while a container rapidly fills with spurting dragon blood. Iris points out the strange bucket-like object placed beside the dissection area. Chiffon explains that the container is a magical tool, originally designed for water shortages but repurposed for this task. She says dragon blood is carefully collected because it is valuable for medicine, cooking, and blacksmithing. She emphasizes that every drop is gathered with care. The dragon's massive body is methodically cut into sections. After a while, Gran smiles. He announces the completion of the dismantling as the crowd erupts in loud cheers. Luke remarks that the dragon was fully taken apart by Gran alone, exactly as expected. He calls out to Chiffon, only to notice she's gone. Chiffon steps forward and announces that she is starting to make dragon stew. She beams proudly and promises an expertly crafted dish. The crowd erupts into chaos as people shout dramatic marriage proposals, leaving Luke in stunned disbelief. Chiffon cuts through the noise and firmly declares that it is time to begin cooking. She starts slicing the dragon meat, then she tosses the vegetables into a bubbling pot. She stirs the massive cauldron with gusto. The two admire how delicious the stew looks and quietly wonder if it is free to eat. Iris glances behind when she hears a voice confirming that the food is free. Gran suddenly pulls them both into a warm embrace and greets them after a long time apart. Luke warns him that he's squeezing them too tight, and Gran immediately apologizes. Gran smiles and says he is glad to see them doing well. Luke asks about Yumi and learns that she is still maintaining the barrier from a distance. From afar, Yumi is focusing intensely on sustaining the field while quietly wishing she could eat too. Iris tells him that Mei and Yuri can use magic even when separated. Gran explains that their magic differs from modern methods because instinct and common sense interfere. He then announces that the stew will be ready soon, and suggests they line up as a steaming bowl is prepared. With a bowl in hand, Luke takes a careful bite. His face lights up as he reacts with delight over how good it tastes. He reflects on how long it has been since eating dragon, and says that the stew is exquisite. Gran asks if dragons were something he often consumed in the past. Iris explains that demons did not see dragons as enemies, and that it was usually humans who hunted them and turned their bodies into weapons. Gran lingers at the thought that dragon materials were commonly used back then. Luke notices the long line stretching out in front of Chiffon. Gran explains that their tavern is open to the public, and that her reputation has made her well known in the capital. He notes that while business is thriving, Chiffon has been struggling with a labor shortage despite repeated attempts to fix it. Before he can finish explaining, Chiffon calls him. She suddenly snaps at him for chatting so casually while so many customers are still waiting. Luke acknowledges that the work does look overwhelming. Gran sighs in resignation and decides to step in to help distribute the food himself. Iris observes that the two of them seem to get along well, and Luke laughs in agreement. In the tavern later, Gran raises a glass and speaks about looking forward to the life ahead while calling for a toast. He celebrates both the success of the dragon dissection and the start of a new journey with new companions. Mugs clink together as everyone cheers. Luke glances around the tavern and remarks that there are quite a number of people gathered. He counts roughly 20 people chatting and drinking. Two beastkin laugh together as Luke notes the familiar races present. Iris reflects on how remarkable it is to see so many different races gathered in one place. He smiles softly and admits that the moment feels like a miracle and something he once only dreamed of. Yumi calls out to them and asks if they are enjoying themselves. She mockingly repeats her question. Luke confirms he is having fun and thanks Yumi for her hard work. Gran admits it feels a little lonely without Rust and the others. The topic shifts to the absent members who are on a job for now but will return soon. Gran adds that the request is not especially difficult and should not take long. Luke notes that Rust and the rest are doing well as adventurers and Gran agrees. Gran reveals that the client belongs to their very own clan. Luke asks if there truly is a request coming from their own clan. Gran begins recounting that several newcomers recently joined the clan, though he downplays them as just kids among the members. He reveals that a younger group was the ones who accepted the request first. He explains that the request itself is a simple low-level herb gathering task, which makes it sound harmless at first. He adds that while such work is normally suited for beginners, the herbs grow on the slopes of a mountain. He points out that the trip takes 2 full days, which makes a same-day return impossible. Gran acknowledges the kids' strength but admits they already accepted the request and left town before anyone could stop them. To keep them safe, Yumi asked Rust and the others to secretly track and protect them along the way. She explains that while other members could have gone, she worried about what might happen if the kids were caught or cornered. Gran agrees that children tend to stick together better than with adults. The two listen in surprise as he reveals that those kids actually respect Rust and the others more than the senior members. Yumi and Gran giggle and say they will understand once everyone returns, and they hear them calling Rust Big Brother. Luke and Iris smile as they think back on how they were just snot-nosed kids back then. The two share a laugh and agree that they should probably not tease the kids too openly about it. Later, they step inside a spacious hall. They note how clean and well-maintained the place is, just as expected for a royal capital facility. Iris points out the registration desk and decides to head over together. Luke steps forward and nervously announces his intention to register as an adventurer. The The receptionist stutters for a moment before hurriedly presenting the registration form. Iris spots her body and her face shifts in annoyance. Luke confirms that all they need to do is fill in the required details. He points to the section asking for special skills and combat style, and the receptionist describes it as an important selling point. She explains that solo registration is common for newcomers, though parties are usually recommended to reduce the risk of death. He explains that they do not need that requirement and asks her to review the document. The receptionist reacts in shock upon realizing it is a letter of introduction and a clan membership agreement. As he signs the paper, she marvels that the invitation came from one of the elite clans. She cheerfully accepts the completed documents and casually assumes the two are siblings. She moves to save the information, using a device powered by ancient clan technology. The machine activates as she confirms the completion. She hands over their adventurer licenses on the counter. Luke reads the information on his license and asks what the class system means. She explains that strength is categorized from beginner to special, with each rank divided into tiers. She clarifies that everyone starts at the lowest tier and can rank up over time based on their abilities. He thanks the receptionist for the explanation and accepts the remaining documents. The receptionist smiles brightly, officially declaring the two of them adventurers. The surrounding staff and visitors clap in congratulations. As they turn to leave, the receptionist hurriedly calls out and asks them to wait. She stops them and asks if it would be alright to share something with them. She holds up a notice and explains that a tournament will be held in the royal capital next month, which would be a good experience for beginners. He politely declines and says that they are not really the type to participate in tournaments. The receptionist looks disappointed but quickly apologizes and accepts their answer. Luke adds that they might still consider it in the future depending on clan policy. She then cheerfully introduces herself as Aaron. Luke waves his hand as they leave. Iris turns to him and seeks his opinion about her. He says he finds them nice and energetic. Iris hesitantly asks about his opinion of her body. Luke struggles to answer directly and admits the topic is not one to discuss casually. Iris reacts with a flustered expression. She abruptly cuts the conversation short as she decides it was a mistake to bring it up at all and turns away in frustration. Luke panics and reaches out as he bumps onto someone else. The boy immediately apologizes and Luke says it's his own fault. He suddenly halts in his steps. He calls Rust in surprise as they face each other. Rust smiles in recognition. Another adventurer suddenly storms forward with hands on hips. She scolds Luke harshly for being a careless rookie. She urges an immediate apology for his senior Rust. Luke echoes the words as he drives the other to fume. She introduces Rust as the most accomplished among the recent rookies. She turns to Luke and snaps at the earlier rude behavior. Luke realizes she must be the person Gran is talking about. Rust bows his head in embarrassment as he apologizes. A puff escapes Luke's lips. He breaks into laughter right in front of them, leaving the others fuming and flustered. The adventurer grips him and calls him out for the rude behavior, while Luke reasons it's not intentional. Iris watches as the adventurer yells at Luke. She sighs and points out that Luke's laughter is only provoking things further, clearly amused despite herself. She turns back with a curious look and questions what the sudden movement she felt was about. The adventurer snaps again and insists that laughing is disrespectful when faced with Rust's real achievements. Luke admits honestly that he would like to see those achievements firsthand someday. The adventurer demands he stop laughing, only to freeze when she sees a paper drifting. Shock flashes across her face as she realizes what it's about. She shows the paper to Luke and claims that it will settle their dispute. He declares a duel for the upcoming tournament. Luke halts in surprise. He insists he has no intention of joining, which drives the adventurer angrier. He reasons that the chances of them facing each other is extremely low because of the qualifiers round. The adventurer insists that the one who advances higher should win. She adds that Rust will also be participating and that losing to him would make any apology unavoidable. Luke realizes that he truly respects Rust, but it's now harder to tell him that they were childhood friends. Figures approach them from behind. Rust suddenly finds himself flanked by May and Yuri, who cling to him. Luke greets them with an easy smile. May greets him playfully, while Yuri promises an explanation later. They drag Rust away before he can move. The adventurer mutters in disbelief. Luke wonders if the two girls are also being treated as seniors. Luke suggests returning to the clan as Iris agrees, while the adventurer prepares to report the completed quest. She urgently stops them before they can leave and demands to know Luke's name. Luke introduces himself and Iris as well. The adventurer introduces herself as Gaia and reminds Luke about the promised tournament duel. Fired up with enthusiasm, she declares his resolve to fight shoulder to shoulder with Rust and the others. Her reckless excitement immediately earns a scolding for swinging medicinal herbs around carelessly. Luke reflects that she does not seem like a bad person, only young and impulsive. Iris smiles and admits that hearing Luke's understanding makes her laugh. Luke shifts the conversation and asks why Iris seemed angry earlier. Iris dismisses it with a small smile and insists it was nothing. She admits that her earlier irritation came from anxiety rather than anger. She suggests they head back while expressing her desire to hear the explanation from Mei and Yuri. Luke drops the conversation and agrees with her. Inside the tavern, Chiffon apologizes and says she feels sorry for the two of them. Iris asks her what she means. She asks if it's about the strange atmosphere she's feeling from the members. Chiffon confirms the tension, noting how everything unfolded while Luke and the others were at the guild. Yumi suddenly called out to gather everyone's attention. She made it clear she wants everyone to work together. The group gathers and notices a familiar look in Yumi's eyes that suggests she has found something interesting. She smiles slyly and hints that she witnessed an incident earlier at the Adventurers Guild. She recounts how she saw Luke accidentally bump into Rust. She tells them that bystanders misunderstood the scene and escalated it into a confrontation around Luke. It reached a point where the two sides decided to measure themselves by their ranks in the upcoming tournament. Yumi hints that a rare opportunity has presented itself. She reframes it as an exciting duel between Gaia and Luke and suggests they should fully support it. Chiffon finishes her story and Luke comments about how predictable Yumi antics are. Iris realizes that the person she noticed earlier was indeed Yumi, which explains why Mei and Yuri stepped in. Chiffon reveals that Gran also approved the plan. She tells them that Yumi and Gran actually get along well and only something serious would make them clash. She then brings up another topic, pointing out that Iris and Luke were supposed to live there starting today. Luke confirms, but insists it's no problem if she's asking them to camp out. She suggests staying somewhere else instead of the clan's main base. She explains that Yumi has lived a long life and owns multiple properties in the royal capital. Luke says he does not mind staying anywhere as long as it does not involve camping and asks why this idea came up at all. Chiffon answers that it connects to what she mentioned earlier, hinting at Yumi's full support. Earlier, Yumi proposes that Gaia and the others be challenged strictly as fellow beginners. She leans in with a playful smile and suggests that everyone keeps the fact that Luke and Iris are Rust and the others' mentors. Iris acknowledges that it will be discovered immediately if they stay at the main base. Luke wonders about how it's like deceiving Gaia. He notes that having a rival will probably make Gaia more focused on training. He wonders if it might just be a small surprise after all. Luke points out that he's already registered in the clan, and Chiffon says it will be fine as long as they don't mention it. She teases the idea of keeping things hidden. He replies calmly that it should not cause any trouble, then turns to check if Iris is fine with it. She answers without hesitation and makes it clear she has no objections at all. The teasing escalates when she adds a remark about being together with her dear brother. Chiffon excitedly giggles as she understands Iris's feelings. With the plan settled, she hands over a map to their accommodations, and they thank her before heading out right away. Luke pauses and asks about Yumi, only to learn she is unusually busy and plans to meet them later. He accepts the explanation without pressing further. They start to leave as Iris thanks Chiffon for the food. Chiffon waves them off and wishes them well as they depart. Chiffon informs that the kids have now left and that it's safe to come down now. Yumi and Gran approach her and remark that things seem to have gone smoothly while casually ordering a drink. Chiffon slams the glasses of juice down the table, her face turning serious as she pushes them. She voices concern that the plan might be sloppy and wonders if they are deceiving the kids. Yumi reassures her and insists there is no need to worry. She points out that both Luke and Iris already agreed, but Chiffon still hesitates. She asks if they have a grudge against the two kids and Yumi denies it. She explains there was just a long past incident where something they did genuinely startled her. She smiles and admits she wants to be the one to surprise them this time. Chiffon grimaces and asks if that's the only reason they're this invested. Gran playfully grins and explains that this tournament was prepared specifically with Luke in mind. Earlier, he gathered the seniors around the table. Manika takes a bite and presses for more details. She questions the real purpose of gathering all the clan leaders like this. Gran drinks in silence as he is addressed. He breaks the silence as he draws their attention. He asks them what they think of the recent tournaments. Manaka answers that they are decent enough, especially for giving new adventurers a place to test themselves. The man beside her named Shin agrees that it is more than enough to keep things interesting and asks if something is wrong. Gran admits it is not bad, but says he wants to be direct about what he is about to say. He grins and announces that he will be participating in the upcoming tournament as well. The clan leaders react with visible shock at his statement. Manaka points out that Gran's class rank is special and normally limits how far adventurers are allowed to participate. Gran insists they hear him out despite the unspoken rules. The others fall silent as he questions whether the quality of new adventurers has declined. They admit the concern may be true even if they wish it were not. One of them, called Billy, agrees and confirms the issue. Gran asks whether the situation is truly a problem at all. He finally lays out his reasoning and claims the real issue lies in a lack of ambition among modern adventurers. Shin stiffens as the idea of a lack of aspiration is spoken. he admits the point has merit while adjusting his glasses. He notes that only children dream to be adventurers, and that youthful ambitions slowly disappear with time. Mana quietly agrees, explaining that adventurers are no longer forced to truly fight, especially those raised safely in the royal capital. She likens those dreams to a fairy tale fantasy, and Gran agrees that the comparison is painfully accurate. He states his resolve to change the current state of things. Manaka asks whether this means he plans to take part himself. She challenges the idea by pointing out that newcomers who lose may have their dreams crushed instead. Gran laughs and claims that a newcomer who joins seriously is far from fragile and may surprise everyone. He calmly explains that he is not belittling the newcomer. He admits honestly that he is unsure he could defeat the newcomer in a direct fight. When the others react in disbelief, he insists that he is serious. He explains that this uncertainty is precisely the point he wants to make. He paints a vivid image of a low-rank adventurer rising through victory over elites and claiming glory in the capital. He downplays the idea as exaggerated but admits it is an appealing story. He then suggests that the veteran clan leaders themselves join the tournament. Manaka immediately raises concerns about safety, while Yumi asserts that the issue can be handled. She declares that the old clans will work together and prepare a defense unlike anything before. She vows to make an absolute barrier promised to withstand even the overwhelming power of special rank magic. The discussion turns tense as the idea of long-divided clans working together is raised. Shin exclaims the possibility if the old clans were ever to learn the truth. Yumi dismisses the worry cheerfully and reassures everyone that permission has already been secured from each clan leader. She admitted she never expected approval herself and wondered aloud what convinced them. She tells them that the elders were far more enthusiastic than expected. Gran raises his glass. He requests all of them to personally participate in the martial arts tournament and even invite capable allies. He presses further, insisting that participation should extend even to those labeled as monsters. Silence follows as the three leaders exchange knowing looks. Gran praises them when they stand up in agreement. He remarks that this upcoming martial arts tournament is shaping up to be far more interesting. Meanwhile, a figure kneels inside the church. She prays beneath the glow of the stained glass, then she perks up in alarm. She rises slowly and turns toward a presence behind her, prompting a hushed reaction. She smiles as she's addressed the saintess. The boy kneels and apologizes politely for interrupting her prayer. Startled, the man looks up in confusion. The saintess suddenly leans in close and flusters him as he struggles to understand what she is doing. She holds a handkerchief and wipes his face as he panics. Overwhelmed by the closeness and sincerity, he recoils slightly. She smiles gently and explains that she has to properly show her gratitude since he came all this way. He freezes in shock as her words sink in. Once he settles down, she kneels before him and asks what caused him to rush around so urgently. He hurriedly presents a flyer and asks her to look at it. The saintess begins understanding that there is a tournament that even special class masters can enter. She studies the details more closely. She finds out that the ancient clan's absolute barrier is involved, which raises the possibility cooperation. She realizes that an ancient clan that always refused to cooperate with them has accepted a request from another kingdom. Unease flickers across her expression. The boy hesitantly explains the possibility of cooperation being limited only to the tournament itself. The thought of this moment becoming a turning point settles in her eyes as resolve quietly takes shape within her. She asks if it would be possible for her to attend the tournament despite her position. He confirms that her presence is formally requested. She declares that the Divine Church will attend as a state guest under the guidance of Holy Providence. She vows to bring absolute protection through the authority of her kingdom. Looking out over the city, she promises peace and tranquility for the citizens through prayer. Finally, she instructs the boy to rest while she prepares to consult higher authority, leaving him overwhelmed but grateful as the weight of her kindness lingers. His eyes widen in awe as the saintess gathers light around herself, her prayer focused on restoring what the world has lost. She declares her departure as the light continues to surge. The boy remains kneeling as she leaps away. He looks up in shock. A single radiant feather rests gently in his hands as he realizes she is gone. Footsteps echo in a dark corridor as Luke hesitates back in his past life, aware that there may be no return once he proceeds. Bacchus urgently calls out from behind. Luke confronts him and demands to know why he has come. Bacchus reacts to the sharp and unexpected greeting. He insists that he will fight alongside him, no matter the cost. Luke listens in silence as Bacchus explains that this resolve is the very reason he came. Bacchus is a rare demon blessed by fire, bound by loyalty as both subordinate and friend. Luke shuts the idea down coldly and states that such a path is impossible for him. He tells Bacchus that only he himself can face the party of heroes. The saintess's existence alone shifts the balance. Bacchus, the implications of her involvement. Luke concludes with certainty that the saintess is an anomaly among humans. He reflects on the saintess as an impossible existence. Luke closes his eyes and says he now understands he was born to stand before her. He reflects that her power and his mirror each other like two sides of the same coin. Bacchus snaps back fiercely and insists that standing before her does not mean he will fall right away. Luke tells him that if he can endure for a while, facing only the Saintess might still be manageable, but her guard that's now blessed by the gods and wrapped in holy energy changes everything about the fight. He grips Bacchus's shoulder and acknowledges that this truth is hard to accept. He urges him to truly understand the situation. Bacchus hesitates and his face crumples. Frustration finally breaks through as he grits his teeth. In a desperate moment, he shouts Luke's name and begs him not to fall. Luke steels himself in the dim corridor, fully aware that stepping forward means committing to a battle he cannot afford to lose. Back in the present, Luke stirs awake. Morning light floods the room as Iris pulls back the curtains. She turns back with a gentle smile and greets him good morning. Luke groggily opens his eyes and offers a sleepy greeting. He complains about the early hour while rubbing his eyes. Iris leans closer and reminds him of their schedule to take on a request with Gaia and the others. The reminder makes him pause. His thoughts drift to the previous night when Gaia arrived unexpectedly at the door. He remembers welcoming Gaia, who had gone out of his way to come as she apologizes for the trouble. When questioned about the vegetables, Gaia turns flustered. His father had asked him to apologize and hand over the bag of vegetables, and Luke knew he must have been scolded. Luke admits he's grateful but tells him that being taught how to accept requests is more than enough help. Gaia encourages him to accept the gift freely. He confidently reassures Luke that seniority still matters even without clan ties, and insists he should not face things alone. He recalls how her own party recently took their first request and how he once accompanied his parents on similar jobs. He cheerfully promises to teach him the basics of being an adventurer, while Luke admits he may have worried too much from the start. Luke recalls Gaia's family's reputation as experienced adventurers. Acknowledging their knowledge, he expresses gratitude and decides to place his trust in them. Gaia eagerly brings up plans for the next day and suggests starting with a simple morning request. He enthusiastically proposes completing a single-day quest and returning home immediately. He declares the plan settled without hesitation. They seal the agreement with a firm handshake. Later, he reflects that he made a promise to Gaia despite his own exhaustion. He stares in surprise as he sees Gaia at the breakfast table waving at him. He smiles and says they've been waiting for him. Luke greets them and apologizes for disturbing their morning. The cat-like magician introduces herself shyly as Yara. The gentle healer named Rika follows and praises the effort put into breakfast even after last night's trouble. He reflects that the two are complete opposites from Gaia, yet together they form a well-balanced party. Iris explains that the ingredients came from yesterday's delivery and hopes everyone enjoys the taste. The table erupts into laughter as requests for second servings fly around without restraint. The group bickers playfully about manners and responsibility as Gaia panics over being scolded last night. In the end, the tension melts into shared smiles as they agree it has been an unusually lively and warm breakfast. After finishing the meal, the quiet scrape of chairs and footsteps fills the room. The group prepares to leave for the Adventurers Guild, only for Iris to stop everyone for a moment. She appears carrying neatly stacked bento boxes and reveals she prepared packed meals for everyone as well. She adds that she even prepared proper wrappings, leaving the group momentarily speechless. Iris nervously asks if all of this might have been unnecessary, but Gaia immediately insists it's appreciated. The party hurriedly reassures her with flustered thanks and apologies, admitting they did not expect her to prepare so much. Iris cheerfully hands over a bento meant specifically for Luke, and he thanks her in response. He notes that each portion was designed to taste good even after it cools down and mentally praises Iris's thoughtfulness. He apologizes sincerely for making Iris go to such lengths, while she shyly downplays it. She quotes the saying about the route to the heart is through the stomach while Luke looks at her in mild confusion. Gaia then urges them to move out soon. Iris calls Luke along, and he answers with quiet resolve. The two reflect on this being their first real job as adventurers. From a distance, the Adventurers Guild comes into their view. They spot the request board crowded with people stretching their hands upward to grab quests. Luke reacts with surprise as the noise and movement emphasize just how packed it is. Before he can say anything else, Gaia sprints towards the board. Luke remarks that the others who were supposed to guide them are already gone. He realizes the request board has turned into a full-blown scramble. He comments that the guild feels intense despite being morning when Rust appears and says this kind of pressure is common for beginners. Luke's eyes widen in surprise. Rust steps forward with the two girls behind him. He checks to see if Gaia and the others are nearby and confirms they're far away. He turns back and admits it has been a long time since the three of them last had a proper chance to talk. Rust also admits that Luke and Iris truly resemble novice adventurers compared to their earlier days in the village. Rust draws attention from nearby adventurers and he stiffens under their stares. Luke notices him being surrounded while he flusters. Rust lowers his head in embarrassment. Luke finds the moment oddly nostalgic and brings up what Rust said earlier. He asks whether this kind of chaos is something only novice adventurers experience. Yuri explains that beginner requests are often simple day trips, which is why early mornings matter so much. Nearby adventurers argue over loot, proving her point that opportunities like this do not come often. Luke asks if there is no possibility of a compromise. May explains that experience in quarreling is just as important because of the first-come first-served aspect. She says that learning restraint before injuries and losses pile up is part of growing stronger. Luke reflects on how much the trio has grown in only a few months. Watching them together makes him quietly wonder if growth like that can really happen so quickly. Iris gently reassures him that demons naturally mature faster. Even so, he admits that the way they carry themselves now makes them feel far removed from being novices. Rust proudly explains that he recently advanced to an intermediate rank and now considers himself a proper adventurer. Both Iris and Luke react with genuine excitement as they recognize the effort he put in after leaving the village. Rust scratches his head shyly, recalling a harsh mock battle from the past where they were utterly defeated by their mentors. He then credits Luke for helping them avoid a fatal outcome back then as Gaia notices them. She suddenly calls out to Luke and Iris and asks why they are not coming along. He jolts in surprise when he sees them talking to Rust. She straightens up and urges everyone to stop talking and move fast before they lose their chance. She rushes for an apology as she pulls Iris and Luke away. She insists they must accept a request immediately. Rust remarks that they would have preferred to join the others, but circumstances do not allow it right now. Yuri adds that this decision comes straight from their superior. May reassures them that the two kids will catch up soon and that they can work together later. Rust reflects on how time and experience have shown him the gap between adventurers. He watches them as he blurts out his desire to see Gaia's reaction once the truth sinks in. Luke admits that with this many people around, he is willing to take on almost anything. He blurts out a question about what kind of request to take. Gaia loudly proposes a day trip herb gathering. He spots a piece of paper up ahead. He and Iris exchange a sharp glance. They surge through the crowd and force their way through the mass. He grabs onto a request sheet and snatches it before anyone else can. Standing tall with the taken request held high, they celebrate their success while holding the competition. The others stare in shock as the aftermath settles, clearly unsettled by how intense things became. Luke realizes why getting requests by word alone was never going to work in a place like this. He looks over the request sheet and notes that it seems simple and free of danger. They later arrive at the forest. He plucks up a plant, explaining that the task is just gathering starvine. He adds that the herb is used for healing potions, though he still feels uneasy about whether they have enough. Gaia tells him that starting out means clearing many small requests before becoming a full-fledged adventurer. Luke resolves to put in more effort while Iris echoes him. Her eyes widen in awe as full baskets of freshly picked herbs rest on the ground. Yara and Rika smile proudly and tell them that hard work and familiarity will make everything easier. Luke realizes that adapting and getting used to the work is part of growing stronger. He reflects on how these simple gathering tasks once fell to his subordinates back then. As the sky turns warm with evening light, the group decides to gather more herbs and head back. A heavy sack filled with herbs is hoisted up, drawing praise for how much they managed to collect. The group walks together as Gaia admits Luke and Iris found twice as much as they did. Luke credits that success to having mentors like Gaia. Iris suddenly calls his attention to something ahead on the road. They spot a person lying motionless on the path and realize someone has collapsed. Luke quickly checks on the body as the group gathers in panic. The unconscious girl stirs slightly alongside her dog, confirming they are both alive. As dusk approaches, Luke decides it would be dangerous to leave them there and offers to carry the girl himself. The girls immediately volunteer to take responsibility for the dog. They carefully lift the unconscious girl together. Suddenly, the girl's eye snaps open. In an instant, she springs upright, startling the entire group. She flails and bolts in confusion, acting as if she is being chased. She lunges toward Iris and grabs her bag. Iris halts in surprise. She takes out the leftover bento she packed earlier, explaining it was meant as backup in case their food ran short. The collapsed girl lights up in shock and gratitude when she realizes the food is being offered to her. Iris looks at Luke for confirmation, and he calmly agrees as the girl thanks them repeatedly. The girl clasps her hands together with overwhelming enthusiasm. They notice her intense hunger and realize just how desperate she must be. The small dog snaps playfully at the food. The girl starts eating while the dog growls beside her. She hesitantly asks if she can share some of the food with her dog. Iris agrees, so she happily splits the sandwich in half and feeds the dog while laughing. She huffs after a while. She finishes her meal with bright gratitude. Luke asks who she is, which catches her off guard. She cheerfully introduces herself as Kiko. She proudly introduces her dog Fukul and tells them it's a girl. Luke observes Fukul's intelligence while warning that lingering here any longer could be dangerous. He explains that they are heading back to the capital and asks what Kiko plans to do next. Kiko asks to travel with them and politely requests help finding an inn along the way. Luke feels unexpectedly flustered by her enthusiasm as he senses an inexplicable charm around her. The group agrees to move on together and sets off down the forest path. Back in the capital, a receptionist apologizes. She explains that all rooms are already taken for the day as the three stare in stunned disbelief. Despair sinks into Kiko as her final option disappears. Luke apologizes as the delay was caused by submitting the herbs. Kiko immediately reassures him that it's alright since it was her decision to tag along. She explains with a shy laugh that inns are often unavailable. She looks up in quiet surprise as Luke offers her to stay in their place. Her eyes widen in disbelief as the offer sinks in. They reassure her and say that they are only borrowing the house and have plenty of extra rooms. Overwhelmed with gratitude, she bows deeply with her dog joining in. As they start walking together, Luke asks why she was lying by the roadside earlier. She admits that they ran out of inns during their journey and tried to push on anyway. She adds that leaving the previous inn with so little food was a poor decision. While her dog grumbles in agreement, Iris asks where she came from and notes that she does not seem to be from around here. Kiko hesitates before explaining where she comes from, only vaguely calling it the Far East. When Luke mentions a distant land known for craftsmen, Kiko immediately lights up with excitement that Luke recognizes her homeland. He recalls Gran wielding a katana for real. Kiko proudly agrees and enthusiastically explains that sword techniques are one of the things her country values most. Iris then curiously shifts the topic to Kiko's clothing and asks if it was also made using those same techniques. Kiko wonders if her outfit looks strange as she explains that the clothes are a traditional shrine maiden outfit worn in her homeland. When Iris asks what that means, Kiko cheerfully explains that it's for shrine maidens to serve the gods. Luke quietly wonders whether someone dressed like that really counts as a priestess. He looks at her with serious curiosity. Kiko laughs off the idea of being a proper shrine maiden and she lacks the mystique. Luke teases her bluntly and points out that true sacred figures would never be reduced to collapsing from hunger. Even so, Kiko insists she understands how the world works. Iris and Luke exchange smiles, clearly amused by her personality. The next morning, Kiko revels in the joy of a safe bed and a delicious breakfast, declaring it the greatest pleasure life can offer. She asks about drinks while the others explain they plan to rest for the day. When asked about her plans, Kiko admits she needs to look for work for now. She tells them she has not decided on anything specific yet. The conversation turns more serious when she is asked why she is traveling in the first place. Luke listens as she prepares to explain her reason for traveling. She explains that the high priestess who raised him instructed him to travel west. She recalls being told her training was lacking and that she needed to become independent. She admits she snapped in anger, grabbed supplies from the shrine, and left without hesitation. The sudden declaration that she would not be returning for a long time leaves the others quietly stunned. Luke and Iris conclude that she ran off while she questions their reactions. Despite insisting she was serious, Luke admits that running away was exactly what she did. He reflects on the contrast of social status and expectations with the modern idea of choosing one's own path. He realized that living freely isn't always a bad thing. He realizes Kiko must be free-spirited and loved by others, and he quietly feels a touch of envy toward her way of life. He then hesitates before bringing up a possible job opportunity. Kiko looks genuinely surprised when she realizes the work he is talking about is nearby. He explains that the job is at a tavern run by his clan and that a friend there is looking for a waitress. Kiko thoughtfully considers the idea while repeating it to herself. Luke admits the tavern is demanding and that many quit quickly, especially with adventurers constantly passing through. Kiko immediately accepts and insists she can handle it after enduring strict training in the past. 2 weeks pass, and the tavern is shown bustling with customers. Luke returns after some time and wonders aloud how Kiko has been doing. Kiko is shown in chaos as she trips while carrying multiple dishes. Chiffon's face twists into fury. Chaos erupts in the tavern as the waitress panics when Chiffon shouts at her. She stays kneeling as she looks aside. Her dog proudly walks by balancing a tray of drinks with perfect composure. The dog pauses and stares back with a clear attitude. Luke watches in disbelief as the argument turns into a one-sided fight against a dog. He remembers the day he introduced Kiko to Chiffon. Kiko was hired on the spot, but her actual work immediately throws the tavern into disorder. Plates go flying as she flails in panic. She crashes to the floor amid broken dishes. A dark presence rises behind her as Chiffon quietly calls out to her. Chiffon snaps in frustration while Kiko smiles nervously. Chiffon smiles and asks if she should fire Kiko. Kiko drops to her knees and begs for mercy. Chiffon coldly refuses and steps closer. The dog suddenly appears and innocently greets them with a wag and a curious look. Chiffon freezes mid-glare. Her expression immediately softens into awe. With the dog's help, Kiko somehow manages to survive the shift and keep working. The customers happily thank the dog for the delivery, while it becomes clear she is far more reliable than her owner. Luke reflects that introducing the maid makes him feel responsible. Chiffon scolds him seriously and warns that at this rate every plate in the shop might end up shattered. She points out that Kiko has been gaining popularity in her own chaotic way as customers laugh and gather around her. Chiffon turns to Luke and sincerely thanks him for something else. Nearby, a drunk patron casually grabs Kiko's hand and invites her out after work. She forcefully pulls away and shouts for him to let go. The man pauses in fury and shock. He grabs her wrist again and demands to know who she thinks she is. Luke stands up and coldly remarks that someone seems far too drunk for this early in the day. Chiffon smiles gently and claims that everything is fine despite the growing tension. Before Luke can ask what she means, Kiko launches forward at full speed. The drunk man is struck head-on by Kiko as she sends him reeling. In one swift motion, Kiko slams the man down to the floor. Luke's eyes widen in deep shock and disbelief. He realizes that Kiko managed to throw the guy into the ground instantly. He wonders if she's executing Eastern martial arts and notes that she seems to understand the body's structure well. Kiko shouts at the man and tells him he can't just do as he pleases with people. She lifts her hand over his face and demands for an apology. The man flusters and stays silent for a moment. He immediately apologizes and reasons that he was just frustrated from work as Kiko admits she got carried away too. She beams and accepts his apology. Luke admits that he had no idea Kiko was capable of fighting that way. He notices that she also has a natural way of calming people. Chiffon says that none of the staff can really fight aside from herself, so having a bodyguard has been a practical necessity. She sincerely thanks Luke for his help. After a brief pause, she suddenly brings something else to mind. Luke stiffens in surprise as she casually asks whether he is going on a date with Iris today. Luke insists that it is not a date at all and frames it as a simple errand. He asks how she knows this, and Chiffon tells him that he's underestimating the information network of their tavern. Cornered, Luke awkwardly admits that they are meeting outside. He recalls Iris throwing him out to the tavern for breakfast. Chiffon giggles when she watches how unaware Luke is. Luke then thanks her for the food and prepares to leave. Chiffon watches him go with a knowing smile and reminds Iris to enjoy herself. Luke crosses the plaza alone. He spots Iris ahead and wonders if he made her wait. Seeing her dressed up makes him freeze as he softly calls her name. Iris stands by the fountain in a dark dress, her appearance refined and noticeably more mature than before. Luke notices the change and realizes she has grown up far more than he expected. He recalls the previous night with May and Yuri and wonders if their presence influenced her. He becomes aware of how strikingly beautiful she looks. Nearby chatter draws his attention as strangers speculate about her and who she might be waiting for. The thought unsettles him as he suddenly views the situation from an outsider's perspective. He panics internally and scolds himself for overthinking and for forgetting his own age and place. He decides to approach her and ask casually if he kept her waiting. She reassures him with a smile that she just arrived. As they stand together, onlookers quickly lose interest upon realizing they are simply siblings. He notices the attention around them lingering longer than usual and tries to steady himself. As she clings her hand into his arm, she casually brings up their plan to visit the blacksmith together. Iris looks up at him and he notices her smile. The warmth of her hand and her closeness make her seem brighter and more radiant in his eyes. He realizes that thinking too deeply about this will only make things worse and cuts the thought short. He confirms their destination and they move forward side by side. Sparks fly as heavy tools strike hot metal. Inside the workshop, craftsmen work steadily while others wait. A cheerful blacksmith greets them warmly to the prosperity of dwarves. Luke explains he needs his sword sharpened for an upcoming match. The blacksmith confirms and asks them to wait. Luke reflects on dwarves, blacksmithing, and how deeply he once relied on craftsmen in another life. The blacksmith returns with the receipt. Luke casually questions the shop's name despite it being run by humans. The blacksmith explains that the name honors a dwarf clan whose mastery once defined the golden age of blacksmithing he aspired to follow. Luke processes the idea slowly, struck by the implication that dwarves once flourished in the past. Another customer interrupts politely and pulls the blacksmith back to work. The blacksmith turns to them and asks them to come back once the sword is finished. Luke and Iris quietly wonder what the blacksmith's words truly suggest. Luke falls in deep thought as he thinks about the possibility of dwarves being extinct like demons. He recalled that dwarves once cooperated peacefully with other races, unlike the hostile elves and the beasts. But the thought unsettles him when he reflects that elves and beasts still exist today. He considers the possibility that the dwarves' disappearance and humanity's decline may be connected. Iris starts to think about the likelihood, but he admits there's no way to confirm. She reminds him of her earlier wish to visit the Royal Library and how they never found the time back then. She suggests that this might be the right moment to go since they are already nearby and no longer rushed. The vast library opens before them, filled with towering shelves that hint at forgotten histories. Iris quickly gets absorbed in the research. After some time, they find that none of the records offer anything truly new or definitive. He admits that he already knows more about the ancient demon tribe than most people. According to the records, both the dwarves and goblins vanished suddenly around the same point in history. He 67 reflects on how unexpected and unsettling that disappearance feels. The texts suggest many theories, but the truth of what happened after the war with humans remains unclear. Iris concludes that if written history fails them, the only option left is to investigate ancient ruins directly. He clutches the books with a troubled look and doubts that a great nation could vanish without leaving clearer records behind. He suggests that it might be better to ask someone who deals with history professionally. They stand before the librarian as she says that everything publicly available on the subject is already gathered here. They ask her whether similar collections exist elsewhere. She admits that even as a national librarian, she knows little beyond these shelves and has never personally seen anything more. She recalls rumors of ancient texts said to exist somewhere. She mentions the restricted royal archives that may be of the national librarian's knowledge. She immediately follows up by clarifying that such records are completely off-limits. Luke realizes that there is no legitimate way to access books deliberately locked away by the government. It reinforces the idea that these hidden records likely contain history someone does not want revealed. He briefly considers sneaking into the castle himself. The thought is quickly dismissed as he remembers his father's position within the government and the trouble reckless actions could cause. He turns back to the librarian and asks earnestly if there is truly any possible chance to read those books. She recalls an upcoming tournament and mentions that the winner of the tournament is granted the right to make a request directly to the king. She says the possibility of accessing the books may lie there. Without hesitation, he decides that the solution is simple and declares that he will just win. The librarian watches the two from afar and quietly dismisses their plan as reckless. Iris casually remarks on his plan to win first place. She smiles and accepts the idea of coming in second as if it were already settled. As they walk together, he reflects on the fact that the library search led nowhere. Despite that failure, they acknowledge the unexpected opportunity created by the tournament's unusual prize. He thanks Iris for spending the day with him and she humbly brushes it off. She wonders how Luke had reacted to her appearance earlier. In her room last night, she questions whether she is still seen as nothing more than a younger sister. The next day's plans take shape as Yuri and May suggest going all out and dressing up properly for the outing. Though hesitant about standing out, Iris is reassured and begins to consider the idea more seriously. The girls bluntly tease her by pointing out that Luke probably would not even notice what she wears. They urge her to go all out anyway. She remembers the encouragement May and Yuri gave her the night before. She grows lost in thought in the present. She convinces herself that he truly might not have noticed a single thing about her today. At the same time, she realizes that even if he did notice, he would likely keep it to himself. Iris quietly hopes that he would at least say something, even if only a little. Her attention sharpens as she notices something. She stops beside a pot of flowers. She casually comments on the marguerite flowers, and Luke notes their simple beauty. He suddenly asks if she wants one, and she immediately denies it. She smiles at the potted flowers and admits she was only admiring them, not actually planning to buy anything. She quietly reflects on how strange it feels to be drawn to flowers like this for the first time. She admits she's surprised about her sudden admiration too. Luke turns to leave and asks her to wait for him. Before she can react, he suddenly walks off with the pot of flowers in hand. She hears Luke asking the vendor for the flowers. He returns and gently offers it to her, making her freeze in place. He explains that she's been looking after him for years and wanted to give it to her as thanks. He smiles gently and offers the flowers to her. She freezes in surprise, eyes wide and flushed as the reality of the moment sinks in. Her thoughts drift back to childhood memories where she was always the one receiving things. She recalls her past and admits she never imagined a future like this could exist. She finally accepts the flowers with trembling hands as she thanks him. He awkwardly calls out to her as he notices how tightly she is holding the bouquet. She hugs the flowers close with a shy smile, clearly unwilling to let go despite the warning to stain her clothes. Iris reflects that he likely still sees her as a child. Even so, she feels content just being close to him. She apologizes softly and admits that she was simply overwhelmed with joy in that moment. She beams while hugging the potted flowers close and promising to take care of them. They start to move forward as she quietly hopes that days like this never end. Luke looks around and notices how lively and packed the city is. Iris smiles and mentions that the opening ceremony is finally starting. Luke remarks that tournaments in the royal capital are the biggest form of entertainment. They observe that even the opening ceremony alone has already drawn an overwhelming crowd for such a large-scale event. He acknowledges that it makes sense people would gather for something like this. Iris casually reflects on how she would have loved to see a tournament like this, back when the demon nation still existed. Luke quietly notices that the surrounding crowd is busy staring at Iris. His focus sharpens as he senses something. He points out a carriage nearby and notes that it looks out of place and does not seem to belong to a noble. A man nearby also notices it. Iris and Luke freeze when they hear that the carriage belongs to the Saintess. They hear that Arca had sent an honored guest for the tournament. The people murmured that they expected the Saintess to attend. They fluster when it sinks in that they are actually seeing such a figure in person. The mention of the Saintess stirs old memories between Iris and Luke. He notes that the Saintess was still human, despite everything abnormal about her existence, which means she could not have lived until now. Iris's expression tightens as she falls silent. She quietly addresses him and shares a thought. She asks whether it is possible that if people can be reborn, then the Saintess herself could have been reborn as well. The idea clearly unsettles him. He answers that if reincarnation is possible for him, then there is no clear reason why it would not be possible for her too. The Saintess once showed no hesitation in killing demons, and if this woman truly is the same one, then Iris may be in far greater danger than he is. He warns that if their theory is true, Iris must run the moment she realizes it. He declares that he will either restrain her himself or be forced to put her down. Iris freezes and realizes that even if Luke usually keeps his power hidden, the person standing beside her has never truly changed. The pressure becomes unbearable, and it made her instinctively want to kneel. That force takes shape as the unmistakable presence of a true king that commands all magic itself. He reassures her that dealing with a single Saintess is well within his ability. He tells Iris not to worry. Iris exhales and forces herself to smile back. After some time, they finally arrive at the venue. Iris notices several people who seem to be participants. She remarks that most of the people around them do not look like serious opponents. Nearby participants bristle at her words and glare. Luke quickly reminds Iris that she would be disqualified if she started fights before the tournament and questions why she keeps provoking others. Iris apologizes and admits she spoke without thinking. He observes that Iris seems far more fired up than usual and reflects that she is still a battle-hardened demon at her core. He thinks that, at this pace, she might end up being his toughest opponent in the entire tournament. A voice rings out as the staff signals for attention. The crowd settles as he declares that the long-awaited main event of the kingdom has finally arrived. Cheers erupt throughout the arena as the tournament officially begins. The announcer explains that the opening will start with a welcome from the king himself. The king instructs the crowd to relax and take their seats. He introduces himself as Griffith and the reigning king of the Leonard Kingdom. He comments on the pleasant weather as Luke notes his reputation as a wise king. Iris recalls that winning the tournament grants a single request from the king, and he agrees that it is all the more reason to give their best. Griffith explains that the tournament will last a week and emphasizes that it was only made possible through the efforts of many contributors. He gives special thanks for the barrier setup and credits it to an elder from the ancient clan named Latos. Latos introduces himself and expresses that being part of the venue's preparation is an honor he will remember for life. Luke wonders if Latos knows Yumi given his long lifespan. Latos addresses the audience by reminding them that his clan has long been forbidden from directly aiding any nation. He clarifies that the absolute barrier will be dismantled once the tournament ends and assures everyone that no further magical knowledge will be given to the Leonard Kingdom. He explains that the ancient clan merely prepared the stage and nothing more. He tells the gathered warriors that the excitement of the coming week rests entirely in their hands. As applause rises, Elder Latos bows politely and steps back from the balcony. His eyes briefly shift through the crowd. Luke halts in surprise. He wonders if Latos was actually looking at him. Iris says she did not notice any strange looks, and Luke assumes he might be overthinking it. The announcer then declares that the next greeting will come from this year's honored guest from Arca. As the Saintess steps forward into view, Luke's breath catches and he recognizes her at once. The Saintess greets the crowd and addresses everyone gathered. She introduces herself as Charlotte of the Sacred Theocracy. As she explains that she was invited by the king, Iris and Luke quietly note how familiar she looks. Iris admits she has only ever seen portraits of the former Saintess, but she agrees there is a strong resemblance. As an image of the past, Saintess lingers in their minds. They sense that something about this woman feels different. Luke points out that while the hair color and aura are nearly identical, her facial features do not quite match. He reasons that if she truly were the saint, she should be radiating holy energy. Iris agrees that she feels no trace of it either and wonders if this means the Saintess is not someone they need to fear. The Saintess brings her hands together. She announces she has one final thing to share as a power exudes from her. A sudden surge of holy energy washes over the crowd. Luke instinctively protects Iris as she thanks him. His expression tightens as he realizes that familiar glow is the same divine magic he has seen before. Charlotte is unmistakably wielding the same holy force once used by the Saintess of the past. Both of them recoil at the sight. The light condenses behind the Saintess and manifests as radiant wings. The display fades and she stands calmly at the balcony once more. She offers her blessing to everyone present. The announcer expresses gratitude on behalf of the kingdom as the saintess finishes her address. Luke wonders if what they just experienced can truly be called a blessing and notes how everyone seems refreshed afterward. He asks if Iris is alright and she reassures him that she feels fine thanks to him. The announcer continues the program as the ceremony moves on. Luke's thoughts return to the so-called saintess and senses that this tournament may spiral into chaos. The crowd disperses peacefully after the ceremony ends. Iris asks whether that woman truly was the saintess they were thinking of. He explains his reasoning by comparing the two saints and concludes that they are likely two different people rather than a reincarnation. Iris questions his certainty. He recalls how the woman wielded holy energy and displayed something resembling divine magic. He admits he does not fully understand her wings but believes that kind of magic was an advanced technique once created by humans of the distant past. He says that there is no way modern humans should be able to use magic like that. He then asks if Iris has ever actually faced the saintess from the past. He recalls how the saint's power back then existed on a completely different level and how a single spell was enough to erase entire groups of demons. He points out that the fact Iris is still standing unharmed is proof that the current saintess is not the same one. Iris reflects that while the holy energy did make her feel breathless, it was nowhere near strong enough to make her feel like she was about to be erased. She concludes that while the saintess may have some connection to the past, she is definitely not the same person. Luke quietly acknowledges that she has a point. He admits that her resemblance to the past saintess and her use of divine magic are both unsettling. He tells her that anyone who can wield holy energy is dangerous regardless of the truth and offers to teach her countermeasures. The next day, the first round of the tournament qualifiers finally begins. The match begins abruptly as a young opponent charges at Luke with a shout. Luke reflects briefly that he feels a little guilty about crushing a young boy's dream. He immediately counters and knocks the boy off balance. The boy drops to the ground as Luke calmly states that this is simply how the tournament works. His attention shifts to the badge on the boy's chest and realizes it belongs to another participant. He reminds himself that he needs to collect 5 badges in the first round and keep them until sunset. Suddenly sensing danger, his expression sharpens as flames erupt across the ground. He jumps back just in time, while someone nearby comments over the scorched pavement. Luke smirks and reminds the figure of the rule not to damage the city. A trembling girl raises her weapon in panic. She turns and bolts without warning. Luke notes that the organizers have not intervened, so he decides there is no issue with how things played out. He reflects that the boy tried to ambush him while he was distracted and adjusted his strategy based on perceived strength. Luke admits the boy has potential and decides to let him go for now. Voices from the crowd comment on Luke's boldness and notes that most beginners would never dare face stronger opponents. They point towards another participant retreating. After a moment of thought, he decides against it and notes that preying on weaker opponents does not sit well with him. Nearby spectators recoil and whisper in shock. A group runs hard through the streets. The group bolts down an alley and runs away from a presence behind. Iris closes in as the group panics at the sight of her. Her eyes sharpen. The group turns back and hastily casts a defensive spell. Fire and wind crash into an offensive spell at the same time. The impact detonates on Iris's spot. The group momentarily cheers as they believe their attack bought them time. But doubt and disbelief suddenly spread across their faces. Iris walks towards them as they question her effortless strength. She calmly smiles as she approaches, and the group immediately bursts into panic. Their screams echo into the sky. Attention shifts to a dog trotting along with a sack in its mouth. Onlookers realize the dog is safely inside the barrier and wonder if it belongs to someone nearby. They realize that none of the adventurers are trying to steal badges from the dog at all. Fukel scampers up to a large barrel. A giggle suddenly greets him. Kiko pops out from the barrel lid and praises Fukal for a job well done. Badges spill into her hand as she decides they're more than sufficient. She cradles Fukal and promises better meals from now on. The crowd pieces together that she had been hiding while her dog quietly gathered badges for her. They realize this clever trick was simply another layer of her overall strategy. They note that using summoned animals or monsters leaves the caster exposed and vulnerable. They praise her style and encourage her to keep going as she thanks them. She declares that she and Fukal will work hard to aim for 5th place. The others question why she would not aim higher and begin discussing the rewards. The 5th place prize is revealed to be a magical tablecloth that can produce 3 meals a day for 2 people. They note that such an item is valuable but not extremely rare. They pity her on the assumption that she must be desperate for food. Kiko focuses on securing 5th place and trusts that Fukal understands exactly why it matters. Her eyes light up with pure excitement as she realizes that securing 5th place means they can finally eat until they are full. She decides that hiding out until time runs out is the safest plan for now. The bell tower finally rings. A heavy pouch stuffed with badges lands on the table. An official announces that Luke has successfully passed the first round of the preliminaries. He scratches his head as he is told he collected an impressive number of badges. The staff gathers the badges while reminding him to keep one on his person throughout the tournament. Rust call out to him from behind and praise him for a job well done. His group approaches together as Luke greets them warmly. Everyone confirms they made it through with enthusiasm. The group compares notes and realizes everyone tackled the first round with their own party and strategy. Gaia hesitates and nervously asks about Iris and the others. Nearby, Iris and Kiko present their piles of collected badges. Luke spots them as Gaia jolts in disbelief over the number of badges they've collected. Rust notes that everyone has passed and suggests celebrating with food at the tavern. The trio agrees instantly, with Kiko's enthusiasm catching everyone off guard. Iris praises Luke and suggests they all restore their strength together. Luke agrees as he looks forward to the challenges of the next round. Elsewhere, soft footsteps echo as the Saintess moves quietly. Her expression hardens as she decides that the time has finally come to act. She rushes after Lottos and urgently calls out to stop him. Lottery turns back and questions why someone like her would seek out an old man like him. Charlotte steels herself as recognition dawns. She bows an apology and explains that she stopped him because she wishes to discuss matters concerning her country's defenses. Lottos reiterates that his people have no intention of sharing their technology with any nation. She acknowledges his stance, yet argues that this tournament is an unprecedented exception in the long history of the races. She questions why such a long-held principle should be broken for a single tournament. He draws a comparison between her holy faith and the sacred teachings upheld by his own people. The maiden listens closely and wonders aloud whether the ancient races also follow teachings of faith. Lottos declines to elaborate and explains that their faith is a closely guarded secret. He explains that there are truths his people cannot share with outsiders. He asks her to understand this limitation given her own title. She clasps her hands and apologizes for intruding on his time. She then gently asks if he would at least stay to observe, and he agrees. She smiles and tells him she's looking forward to it. He returns the sentiment and wishes her well as they prepare to part. The second preliminary round begins at the third venue. A fierce clash ends decisively with one fighter standing victorious. Luke notes that the second round will now proceed as a one-on-one tournament format. Kiko excitedly confirms and explains that it is happening across multiple venues at the same time. She says that almost 200 out of 1,000 adventurers have made it through. She continues explaining that only the top 24 will move on to the main tournament, which would be impossible if everything were held in one place. Iris notes that unlike the chaotic first round, this stage is meant to test pure individual skill. Luke agrees and shares that he is eager to see how everyone performs. He adds that their own matches are scheduled for later, giving them time to observe first. The announcer signals the start of the next fight as the focus shifts to the arena floor. A lively introduction presents Mei as a rising star who has been drawing attention recently. Her opponent is a towering fighter wielding a massive battle axe known for overwhelming force. The crowd reacts in disbelief as the tiny girl is matched against a massive opponent. Iris remarks that Mei is likely outmatched. The signal to start is given as the fight officially begins. The brute swings his massive axe down with full force. He lashes out in frustration when he realizes Mei has vanished from sight. Mei activates lightning magic and prepares a decisive strike. Electricity surges as she finishes the match quickly. She lands gracefully after the exchange. The announcer declares her victory as the crowd erupts. Luke and Iris note how much stronger Mei has become since leaving the village and feel relieved that her training paid off. The crowd erupts once more as Yuri's match is announced. An adventurer named Ortez confidently waves to his fans. Some spectators grumble and jeer as they root for his loss. The pair quietly note that Ortez is genuinely skilled and carries himself like a true swordsman. Concern rises as Yuri's role as a rear-guard mage puts her at a disadvantage. Iris remains confident that Yuri will manage just fine. Ortez is introduced as a popular and talented contestant as he steps forward. Yuri enters the arena and draws attention as another rising star admired for both beauty and strength. The signal to begin is given. Ortez opens by proposing surrender and framing it as an act of mercy toward Yuri. Yuri calmly thanks her opponent for the consideration before firmly declining. She smiles and asserts that she is not fragile enough to be defeated by pity. Ortez lowers his gaze with a tense smile. He challenges Yuri directly and suggests that she may be hiding a misjudgment based on appearances. He reaches for her weapon. He then launches forward with a burst of speed and declares his full power. Yuri responds by calling forth a manifested sword spirit. The summoned blade clashes against Ortez's. He recoils in shock as his confidence shatters. A towering spectral knight materializes before him, and he can only wonder what he's facing. Yuri mockingly asks if he's surprised. She explains that the being before them is a spirit she summoned through magic. He mutters that only elite mages can summon spirits. Ortez stiffens in disbelief as he recognizes that this power is far beyond what he has ever encountered. He questions whether Yuri even chanted. He struggles to grasp how such advanced magic was performed so effortlessly. Luke notices that Yuri used ancient magic and praises Iris for training her well. Iris dismisses the praise and insists that he should wait until the results are declared. Ortez steadies himself and admits he misjudged Yuri. Ortez launches himself into a desperate overhead strike as he shouts his refusal to accept defeat. The attack is easily intercepted by the spirit. Ortez grits his teeth and realizes direct attacks against the spirit are useless. Luke remarks that Ortez is not making poor decisions, but he's moving far too slowly. The spirit gathers power for an attack before Ortez can react. He sees the blade behind him too late. Ortez crashes to the ground as the match is decisively called. The announcer declares Yuri the winner as she waves to the crowd. Luke and Iris reflect that the fight was closer than comfortable, but still a clear pass. Iris remarks that only Rust remains and asks Luke if he thinks he'll be okay. Luke grins confidently and says that Rust is his first disciple and he will not fall easily. Iris stops for a moment. She teasingly reflects on the title of being a Demon King's sole disciple and concludes that defeat does seem unlikely. The crowd's attention shifts as the next match is announced. Rust is revealed to be stiff with nerves. Iris notes that while May and Yuri carried natural confidence, Rust's strength lies in his humility. Meanwhile, Rust's supporters cheer loudly for him. Luke observes that his supporters seem oddly mature. Attention turns to his opponent, whose armor suggests formal training and possible ties to the kingdom's knights. They realize that this tournament is no longer limited to adventurers. The pair react in confusion as they suddenly notice Kiko is missing. They find her along the stands and loudly cheering Rust's name. Luke wonders aloud how the two managed to get there. Both fighters step into position as the match begins. The knight sizes Rust up as he recognizes his stance and connects him to Patrick. Rust admits he does not consider himself the favored disciple being described. The knight is visibly shaken as Rust explains there is another disciple who far surpasses him. The knight apologizes and explains his true goal is to someday duel Patrick himself. He reveals that Patrick personally encouraged this ambition, saying that he will accept a duel if he manages to defeat his beloved disciple. He decides that the revelation clarifies the path he must take. He declares that those words mean he must defeat both opponents to achieve his dream. Luke reacts awkwardly as they realize this promise was something Patrick likely made impulsively. Iris suggests that such promises usually come from desperation and pressure from passionate challengers. A brief flashback shows the knight begging on the ground. Luke questions if it means he'll have to fight him in the future. Iris reminds him that Rust's victory would deny that future, so he decides to cheer properly this time. Kiko enthusiastically invites them to join and offers a handmade charm from her hometown. Luke takes the fan and cheers for Rust along with her. Rust starts to note that the knight's tactics may have been learned from Patrick. He launches forward with his blade raised and declares the opening strike. The knight reacts with a sharp grin, impressed by Rust's speed. Rust skids back through dust as his frustration builds. Luke watches calmly, intrigued by how the match is unfolding. Rust studies the knight and realizes he's still not fighting seriously. The knight confirms it openly and taunts Rust for holding back as well. Both fighters spread out across the arena, mana flaring as the knight suggests ending the warm-up. Kiko notices the shift immediately and notes that both contestants are skilled. Luke explains that Rust's internal control of mana came from Patrick's teachings and the external reinforcement came from Luke himself. Kiko realizes that Rust is maintaining two enhancements at once. Luke reflects that the technique on display is impressive, but clearly earned through relentless effort rather than talent alone. He recalls how Rust's admiration for adventurers pushed him to work hard. He admits with quiet pride that Rust forced himself through harsh training to reach this point. He urges Rust to win as blades clash. Rust notes that his opponent is a seasoned knight whose experience gives him the advantage in pure technique. Sweat beads in his eyes as he realizes he must act decisively now. He commits to an all-out strike fueled by desperation and resolve. The two blades meet again in a fierce exchange. The crowd holds their breath as Rust's sword is deflected. Rust recoils under the looming blade as the danger of defeat crashes down on him. Panic and disbelief hit Kiko and Luke as they watch. Shock flashes across Luke's face. A confident smirk forms on Rust's face as he commits to a risky move. Rust slips inside the knight's guard and strikes from a blind angle. The knight crashes to the ground as Luke realizes he deliberately baited the opening and executed it flawlessly. Pride replaces worry as Luke shouts his praise. Rust straightens and basks in the moment after his victory. Later, Rust approaches the group immediately. He eagerly asks for Luke's feedback. He instantly earns Luke's calm approval and reassurance that the match was well fought. Rust beams with surprise as he receives praise for faking an opening and landing a solid counter. Iris congratulates both girls as well and expresses relief that they kept training even after leaving the village. The group then casually agrees to watch Gaia's match next. In the fifth tournament venue, A massive arena already echoes with battle cries. Lightning and crimson magic collide violently as two fighters clash. One combatant struggles to rise and refuses to concede. A long fingernail halts inches before his face. Sharika overwhelms her opponent as he admits defeat with no strength left to continue. The crowd erupts as Rust and the others cheer. Rust acknowledges Sharika having fought bravely even though the matchup itself was unfavorable. He explains that matchups are decided by chance and notes how even beginners can sometimes advance far with the right luck. Luke reacts with a half-joking acceptance. Their focus lands on Gaia, who is visibly distraught. A much stronger knight stands before him, embodying the risk of being paired against someone far above one's level. The match is abruptly announced to begin. The veteran casually offers to give Gaia the first move. Gaia answers with forced bravado as he grips his weapon. The crowd watches closely, aware that this fight is more a brutal public spar. Luke and Russ discuss how often these uneven battles occur, and they conclude that it is not unusual. They agree that being thrown onto the big stage only to fall in moments is cruel. Luke admits he wanted to duel with Gaia, but the moment already seems to be impossible. The exchange turns brutal as a clean strike lands, forcing him to grit his teeth while pain flashes across his face. The match is abruptly halted by the official. The group acknowledges that Gaia ran into a worthy opponent. Russ points out that the next fight is coming up soon. They later walk through the streets to get to the next venue. Gaia vents his frustration about being matched against someone far beyond him. Russ reassures him that standing up to a higher-ranked opponent still proved his resolve and growth. Attention turns to the other girls as their matches are praised as well. Gaia declares his determination to grow stronger as Rust asks about Luke's opponent. Luke admits he hasn't had the chance to check yet. They head toward the posted brackets together to check. Rust notes their luck in reaching a major arena match, and that the attention it brings could be a double-edged sword. He suddenly freezes when he sees the brackets. He reveals that Iris's opponent is already far more experienced than expected. Shock sets in even more as he learns that Luke's opponent is a special class adventurer with a notorious title. Rust admits he has never heard of the name. Rust explains that Shin is among the capital's strongest mages. Shin is just below an elite tier where Yumi belongs. Luke reassures him that if the opponent is weaker than Yumi, then the fight is no threat. Rust admits he heard through a letter that Luke defeated Patrick, but he still worries deeply about his childhood friend. He worries over the fact that Luke has to fight a special class adventurer. Gaia urges Luke to forfeit, and it becomes clear that his concern comes from genuine fear. Luke reassures them that the opponent is not the type to kill on sight and suggests there is no need to panic yet. Gaia insists that Luke must withdraw immediately if the fight turns dangerous. He reminds him that life is precious and worth protecting. Luke reflects that Gaia is surprisingly kind and has always looked out for him like a brother. He praises Rust for having a reliable senior and promises he will not put on a disappointing fight. May and Yuri check on Iris's condition as her match will come first. Iris declares she will fight in a way that won't embarrass Luke. They arrive inside the arena moments later. Iris steps onto the arena floor as her opponent approaches. Mana studies Iris with a knowing smile and acknowledges her reputation as the infamous newcomer. Iris remains emotionless as Mana identifies her and her clan. Mana lightly brushes off the secrecy and explains that the cheers will drown everything out anyway. She says that Gran and Yumi filled her in about lively newcomers stirring up the tournament. Iris processes the implications and realizes that special class fighters are being deliberately gathered into the event. The idea unsettles her as she wonders whether they orchestrated this tournament for her and Luke. Mana notes Iris's unusual calm and admits she prefers strong opponents rather than fragile ones. She proposes a wager now that they are facing each other. She lays out her condition that her victory would mean Iris joining her women-only clan. She promises Iris freedom to take requests with other clans. Iris accepts the terms but makes it clear there is a condition of her own. She smiles with quiet confidence and declares that she does not believe Mana can defeat her. Agnos halts in surprise. Her eyes narrow as the weight of the challenge sinks in. She calls out Iris's audacity to talk to her that way and threatens to violently crush her. Iris teasingly invites the challenge while acknowledging the stubbornness behind it. The signal is given, and the duel officially begins. Manaka notes Iris as a rising star, and quietly weighs her chances against a veteran opponent. Gran notices her confidence in Agnos's expected victory. Manaka confidently says that everyone would bet on Agnos because of her experience. Gran smiles and places his wager on Iris. He seals the bet as the loser is tasked with treating the entire opposing clan to dinner. She questions whether that level of confidence is real and doubts anyone would gamble without a chance to win. She resolves herself and openly decides to place her bet on Agnos. Gran chuckles and tells Yumi that Manaka will be treating their clan to dinner. Yumi shakes Manaka aggressively as she asks for confirmation. Manaka clarifies that they have a wager between Iris and Agnos. Gran tells Yumi that he placed his bet on Iris. Yumi quickly laughs it off and thanks Manaka in advance, as if the outcome is already settled. Gran points out that Iris's victory is clear. Manica remarks that luck often decides matches and suggests they simply watch the fight unfold. Iris asks if her opponent plans to stay back or finally join her. Agnos confidently asserts her rank advantage and makes it clear that she is the one setting the pace of the fight. Iris calmly accepts the offer of the opening move. She decides she will attack without restraint as she closes the distance immediately. Agnos's eyes widen, her sword lifting in defense as she grits her teeth. Gran wonders if the match may already be turning on the very first exchange. Agnos freezes as confusion flashes across her face at the sudden shift in momentum. Seeing Iris holding her weapon with one hand unsettles Agnos. She realizes she is being steadily overwhelmed. Iris acknowledges Agnos's strength and explains that the decisive blow failed only because it was properly guarded. She examines her chipped dagger with mild annoyance and remarks that she refuses to rely on inferior equipment. She then asks about the nature of Agnos's blade. Agnos confirms the weapon was forged with carefully gathered materials. Agnos's focus sharpens as Iris suddenly presses behind her. Agnos recoils in panic. Panic flashes across her face as she realizes she might die. Iris observes that her weapon has finally snapped and concludes it cannot be fixed. She casually tosses the broken dagger aside and declares it unusable. Agnos remarks that a dropped weapon usually means surrender, but Iris implies that struggling now would only invite Luke's ridicule later. Her hand suddenly reaches for Agnos's face in an attempt to finish the fight. In a blur of motion, Agnos is hurled skyward. Luke smiles in amusement and disbelief. Still airborne, Agnos twists her head back in shock. Iris retrieves her sword and raises it towards the sky. Agnos freezes midair in panic. She desperately admits defeat while falling, surrendering outright and begging not to be left to crash alone. Iris loosens her grip without hesitation. She catches Agnos mid-fall as the sword clatters uselessly to the ground. Manica reaches out, unable to process what she is seeing. She reacts in disbelief while insisting the scene should be impossible. A confident grin follows as the outcome becomes clear and the bet is casually claimed. Manica asks about Iris while Gran insists he cannot tell her. He says that Iris herself asked him to keep quiet about it. Manica speculates that Elaris must be someone's carefully hidden disciple. Gran insists that he is bound by an oath to stay silent. He adds that it's not just a verbal promise. He tells her that the truth can only be learned by confronting Iris herself. Manica is caught off guard by the idea that this secrecy carries real weight. She grows suspicious and wonders if this secrecy is tied to a magical oath or binding contract. The implications sink in as she realizes a beginner could not cast such magic without a special class counterpart agreeing as well. She then apologizes for overthinking and admits she knows Gran would not break a promise lightly. Gran shrugs it off and suggests that Iris might simply tell the truth if asked outright. Gran casually brings up that Shin is facing Luke next and asks if another bet is coming. Shin turns to him emotionless. The terms are clarified, as Gran confirms the bet would be on whether Luke wins or not. Shin presses and asks which side Gran would choose if he were to gamble. Gran declares his unwavering faith in Luke no matter what happens. Shin falls silent. Then he boldly claims his own victory and vows to crush the opponent Gran treasures. Gran and Yumi smile to themselves, already imagining an extravagant dinner. The arena settles as Iris calmly holds her fallen opponent. Gaia freezes in disbelief. He struggles to process how strong Iris had actually been and how she managed to win. Luke simply explains that Iris grabbed Agnos's face and flung her. He says that Iris's move forced surrender by default. Gaia expresses his disbelief and calls Iris amazing. Luke casually praises Iris, while Rust jokes that the way he speaks makes him sound like her father. Rust playfully tells Luke that the same standard will soon be expected from him. Luke promises that he will live up to the standard Iris has set. He later stands in the arena and waits for his opponent. Shin approaches from across the field as cheers for him roar. Luke accepts the weight of the crowd's expectations. The spectators erupt in cheers as they openly root for Shin's victory. Luke's smile darkens as he reflects that as a demon king, breaking hope itself brings him satisfaction. Shin formally greets Luke and says that Gran has spoken highly of him. Luke brushes off the praise and insists that he is nothing special. Shin is taken aback by his modesty. He thanks Luke for the match and admits he did not expect to face a rookie. He reveals that his work involves excavating ancient ruins. He then points out that Luke is hiding his mana so well that Shin only raised his guard at the last moment. Luke admits he read him perfectly and notes that even Yumi would not have noticed so easily. Shin admits he only noticed up close and remarks that Luke's mana concealment surpasses anything he has ever seen. He suggests his talent would suit magic far more than swordplay, while Luke quietly wonders what he takes him for. He decides he has no obligation to correct Shin's assumption. Both fighters take their stances as the match is formally declared to begin. Shin prepares to unleash a spell designed solely for destruction. A devastating conflagration takes shape. He releases a purifying inferno that surges forward. The crowd erupts in panic and awe as the barrier strains. Rust and Gaia panic as they realize Shin is unleashing his supposed trump card immediately. They scream Luke's name as the flames engulf his position. Shin watches with a strained smile that slips into nervous laughter. From within the inferno, Luke continues advancing unharmed. He reveals a calm and confident smile. Shin snaps back into focus and unleashes another spell. A surge of magic erupts forward, colliding flames and blades as his attack crashes across. He panics when he releases a spell that could have wiped out an entire village. He's left stunned when the overwhelming magic fails to finish Luke. Luke casually comments that his clothes got slightly burnt. Shin remains shaken that even his strongest magic was completely stopped. Luke suggests that if that was everything he had, surrender would be the sensible choice. Shin steadies himself and admits he has been waiting for an opponent strong enough to push him this far. He declares that he will respond with his greatest spell as a sign of respect. Luke analyzes the moment and considers using the opening to strike first. He weighs the odds and decides that he will not die even in the worst case. Shin channels mana as he prepares a serious counterattack. He invokes a powerful entity tied to flame. A massive magic circle ignites above the arena as a fire deity is summoned. A colossal fiery form begins to take shape in the sky. Condensed flames twist and compress. The fire solidifies into a distinct blazing hand. Massive fiery steps echo. Luke watches with slight worry and curiosity. He reflects that interrupting the chant earlier might have been the smarter move. Shin sneers that it is far too late for that. The fire spirit surges out at his command. Luke raises his barrier just in time and acknowledges how flawless the enemy's speed and power are. He realizes that simply maintaining his defense will not save him, and that he is being cornered. Shin is convinced that this decisive strike will bring everything to an end. The fire spirit gathers power around him. Shin mockingly hopes that Luke doesn't die from his attack. The fire spirit lunges forward at full force as Shin urges it on. Luke immediately calls forth a counter. A group of ancient water spirits descends from his spell. Shin freezes in shock. The water spirits cradle the flames of his spirit. The summoned flames are forcibly crystallized and locked in solid ice. He stumbles back in disbelief and realizes this is a direct counter to his own god-grade magic. He despairs over the culmination of years of research for this spell. He questions Luke's true identity in panic. Luke admits this was an improvised gamble and shows quiet relief that it succeeded. He did not know Shin's original magic but recognized its structure from his past life and rewrote it. He reveals that Shin's spell was incomplete and meant to summon a god-level being beyond its caster's mana. By altering the spell to summon a lesser divine existence instead, he created a controllable outcome that sealed the flames. Shin kneels as the summoned water spirit towers over him. The water goddess drifts forward with grace, smiling as she reaches out. Shin admits the loss as the spirit looms before him. The arena erupts as the match is officially decided. Luke is announced as the victor who defeated the capital's proud mage. Later, the crowd tries to get closer to Luke. Gaia clears a path for them and talks about celebrating the victory together. Luke notes that he's finally back to his usual self. Earlier, Gaia awkwardly grabbed Luke's face. He struggles to explain himself and admits he feels unsure how to even start saying it. The others casually brush it off and note that Gaia and the seniors can handle things. Luke smiles awkwardly. Gaia shouts for everyone to clear the way, acting more like an attendant than a senior. Kiko appears and thanks Gaia's group for letting them proceed without further trouble. Luke realizes she appeared out of nowhere again, and she explains she just finished her match. Luke asks about it, and Kiko proudly announces her victory. She celebrates being closer to a luxurious life, while Luke remarks with interest on how she plans to keep winning. With several competitors still left, they agree they need to stay focused for tomorrow. In the tavern, Gran cheerfully declares that tonight's dinner will be extra special and worth enjoying. Everyone raises their mugs together and celebrates their hard work and victories. Gaia glares in embarrassment and frustration. He furiously calls Luke out for not telling him they're part of the same clan. Luke reveals that the surprise was intended by Gran. Gran adds that Luke and Iris technically belong with them already, since the clan was created with them in mind from the start. Gaia stares in disbelief as he realizes that the clan was meant for Iris and Luke. Luke recalls that the idea was planted back when they were still living in the village, and Gran and Yumi visited. He reflects that the promise of a clan was meant to give them a place to belong once they became adventurers. Gaia is stunned as he realizes the reason why Gran and Yumi never joined another clan. He bluntly questions what exactly he and Iris did to win over Gran and Yumi so completely. Shin suddenly appears behind them and claims he wants to know the reason too. He admits his curiosity and admits he wants to hear the story behind Gran's decision. He makes it clear that what truly interests him is uncovering who Luke really is. Luke explains that there is very little he can actually share, even if pressed about his identity. Shin playfully insists they are closer friends than Luke admits. Luke shifts the focus and expresses relief that Shin seems unharmed. Shin reacts in disbelief as he realizes Luke was treating the duel as a trial run. He fixates on the ice magic involved and questions that such a spell could be constructed and deployed on the spot. Luke points out that the foundation of that magic came from Shin himself. He admits that the spell he used was copied from Shin's. He explains that the copying did not happen in a single moment. He reveals that he carefully observed the spell's structure and chant, on top of seeing a similar one in the past. Shin echoes the idea of a similar spell from experience. He decides that Luke sounds like a seasoned adventurer and refuses to pry any longer. He instead questions Gran's true motivation for forming a clan as Gran arrives. Gran reveals that he once tried to recruit the two of them into his own clan. Luke adds that Gran simply recognized his abilities. Shin suggests an alternative and proposes his own clan for Luke and Iris to join. Luke admits his fascination with ancient demon legends and recalls how they promised to pursue those truths together once they became adventurers. The mention of an ancient demon race immediately clicks into place for Shin. He reflects that no one has ever been devoted enough to truly study that forgotten mythology. Yumi's struggle to find kindred spirits suddenly makes sense to him. Shin apologizes for the interruption while making it clear that he intends to rely on them if there is ever another chance. Gran then encourages everyone to keep the conversation going. Luke asks if he shared enough, and Iris reassures him that it went exactly as expected. Chiffon announces that tonight's dishes will use premium ingredients provided by Manhwa and Shin. Luke and Iris agree that things are about to get lively starting tomorrow. As the night winds down, closing time finally arrives. Ortez sits in silence with his drink. He thanks the tavern keeper for the meal as he's praised for his effort that day. Walking alone through the night, the weight of his loss sinks in. He replays the duel in his mind and reminds himself he fought seriously, yet still fell short. His fist finds the wall, as his thoughts drift to the smiling face that gave him reason to fight. He scolds himself for brooding and resolves to search for another path forward. A sudden presence snaps his focus as steel clashes violently, forcing him to react on instinct. His eyes widen in shock as he locks blades with a hooded figure. He realizes his attacker is younger than expected. He demands answers and asks who the mysterious assailant is and why he is being targeted. The attacker answers with silence and launches another relentless strike. Ortez realizes the overwhelming gap in power and understands it means the attacker's goal cannot simply be to kill him. Before he can figure out the attacker's objective, he appears behind Ortez with a dagger near his neck. Dark energy surges as he is struck, her strength giving out while pain and exhaustion take over. The attacker vanishes with Ortez as he apologizes and calls out for Claire. Luke and Iris stare ahead in confusion. Kiko insists this is a serious and real situation. She explains that someone is deliberately targeting adventurers right now in the royal capital. The group proceeds to watch the current match, while Luke struggles to understand how adventurers are missing. Kiko recalls reports from the guild and tavern and confirms that adventurers in the royal capital have been disappearing one after another. She narrows down the victims as fighters around intermediate to advanced level. She piles up examples from well-known brawlers to Ortiz. She says that their families are now searching in desperation. Luke concludes that this is abduction, and whoever is responsible must be highly skilled. Kiko notes that there is no true motive, so there is nothing specific they can prepare defenses against. Kiko suggests for Luke to solve it quickly with magic. Luke admits this kind of problem is not his specialty and reminds them to stay alert and careful. Elsewhere, a figure watches the same match. The Saintess appears behind the window. She turns away from the glass. She then sits and asks for a report on how matters are progressing. The hooded attacker kneels and reports that things are proceeding according to plan. The Saintess relaxes slightly after hearing that there will be no further trouble in the capital. She follows up by asking about the checkpoints, only to be reassured that they pose no concern. She entrusts the rest to her subordinate and offers a gentle apology for the trouble caused. The subordinate responds with absolute loyalty and asks to be used freely. She corrects him that they are not tools to be used. She calls them her precious treasures and instructs them to withdraw if they ever sense danger to themselves. His eyes widen as he declares that even if their lives end, the mission must always come first. He explains that his choices are guided by what he believes is best for the Saintess. Radiant light gathers in her hands as she calls upon a holy blessing for him instead. He manages a weak expression of gratitude. He then turns away to leave. The Saintess notes that events appear to be proceeding smoothly. A sudden knock interrupts the calm. A young attendant enters with a fresh drink. The attendant hesitates and looks around in confusion, questioning if someone entered the room while she was gone. The Saintess assures that no one entered the room. She points out that visitors within the capital are supposed to be filtered through the attendant. The attendant apologizes as the Saintess reassures her that it is fine. She savors the drink and praises the attendant's brewing. She admits that someone like her should never have been allowed to meet the Saintess in the first place. She recalls how she was once a country orphan before being chosen and appointed as the Saintess's attendant. She reflects that it still feels unreal while the Saintess thanks her for coming. She notes that another match is about to begin and asks who the attendant plans to cheer for. She smiles and says she needs a moment to think. She recalls Iris, who fought bravely the day before, and decides she wants to support her. The Saintess pauses and identifies her. The attendant then asks her who she plans to cheer for. The Saintess answers that she will cheer for everyone equally. She admits that her neutral stance is only what she shows on the surface. With a playful wink, she quietly reveals that her true support is reserved for Luke and asks that it remain a secret. The attendant freezes in surprise. She realizes the Saintess has a fondness for powerful fighters. The Saintess reflects that warriors like Luke could change the fate of their nation. She imagines a future where such strength keeps monsters at bay. The Saintess turns her attention back to the arena as the match begins, and she smiles with anticipation. Outside in the bustling streets, a hesitant voice cuts through the crowd. Luke searches for ingredients Iris requested, and notes that only the spices remain. He then reflects about today's matches. He and Iris advance by default after their opponents forfeit. Kiko wins her match with ease, while Rust's group is eliminated outright by overwhelming strength. Luke notes that he did not expect their group's matches to end before noon and feels the momentum slip away. He suddenly hears a commotion about 2 silver coins ahead. He sees a shopkeeper firmly insisting that lowering the price any further is not possible. A blonde girl sweetly presses for a discount. Onlookers comment on how boldly she pressures the shopkeeper. The exchange ends with the shopkeeper reluctantly handing over the goods. The vendor gives in as the girl gratefully accepts it. Luke watches with mild amusement. The stall quickly draws more customers after the commotion. Luke reminds himself that it is time to finish his errands and head back. His calm breaks when he suddenly senses trouble. A rough man grabs at the girl and demands she hand over what she has. The girl clings to the bag and protests desperately. The man tightens his grip irritatedly. The girl freezes as a firm voice cuts in. Luke steps forward and makes it clear he will not tolerate bullying. The thug immediately calls Luke's audacity out. Luke points out that 2 grown men ganging up on a girl should feel ashamed of themselves. One of the men snaps back and challenges him. The other one realizes that Luke is the one who defeated Shin in the arena. The man leans over to look closer. Panic sets in when he fully recognizes who Luke is. They hurriedly back off and apologize while retreating. Luke acknowledges that people like that are common in the capital. He checks on her and she insists she is fine, even as she worries about what she has lost. Luke helps gather the fallen produce and assures her that he will lend a hand. Later, he notes that they have picked up everything that can still be saved. She explains that this amount is more than enough and proudly mentions she bargained hard earlier. Luke comments on how impressive she was and asks if she always handles things that way. She eagerly says yes and admits her family situation forces her to be capable and dependable on her own. She talks about her brother working hard, though she confesses she relies on him more than she should. Luke reassures her that it sounds like she has a good brother. His expression shifts when hers does. She admits with visible worry that her brother is only a mid-rank adventurer and has been missing since the day before. Luke connects her concern to the recent disturbances in the capital. The girl explains that her brother never wanted her to worry and always tried to keep her informed. She says that this time there was no message and no return, which makes her certain something went wrong. She hurriedly apologizes when she realizes she has spoken too much. She brightens and offers him some of the goods she bought as thanks for listening. Luke takes the chance to ask if she has an ingredient from the list and she confirms. She hands it over and says she should get going. Just as she turns away, he calls out to stop her. He asks for her brother's name. She hesitates, unsure if the name will mean anything to him. She finally says the name, and the moment it leaves her lips, his eyes widen. She tells him that her brother's name is Ortez. Back at home, Iris asks if Luke truly plans to look into the girl's brother's disappearance. He answers that he wants to help if possible since he cannot simply turn away. He admits they are short on time but still feels compelled to act. He reflects that seeing the girl Claire worry about Ortez reminded him of Iris and the grief she still carries for Bacchus. Iris points out that helping others despite being busy is something he resembles closely. She agrees to assist as well when she sees no reason to object. Kiko eagerly joins in and promises to gather information. He thanks them sincerely and realizes once again how fortunate he is to be surrounded by them. The group agrees to juggle the tournament and the investigation at the same time. Kiko immediately takes charge and insists that information gathering comes first. They sit around the table as they update Chiffon. Luke explains that they want to look deeper into the incidents surrounding the disappearances. He asks if there is anything she might already know. She confidently remarks that information gathering is her specialty. The group leans over the table as she begins laying out what she already knows about the case. She identifies Ortez and notes that he lived with his mother and younger sister. She illustrates Ortez drinking at a tavern after finishing his tournament match. She explains that he left the tavern late at night and vanished afterward without a trace. Chiffon takes charge of the missing person search. Luke asks about the cost of the information fee. She declares that her fee is a single favor, as he realizes this may cost more than simple payment. She explains that she will brief Gran and the others once they return from the tournament. Luke acknowledges that her help makes things easier. He then resolves to speak directly with Ortez's family. The group arrives late at the family's home. Claire struggles to speak as she brings up her missing brother. She promises to help in any way they can if the group will search for Ortez. Claire then prompts to introduce herself. She firmly identifies herself as Claire and the younger sister of Ortez. She then introduces their mother Onette, who apologizes softly for the trouble. Luke realizes they haven't introduced themselves. They present themselves as adventurers known as the Seekers of the Era. Claire and Onette react in shock as they realize these are the same famed seekers they have heard about. Claire eagerly explains that Ortez admired them deeply. She recalls how her brother praised Gran as a great and dependable adventurer. Luke reflects that Gran is a rough but kind man who accepted people easily and always kept his promises. Luke apologizes for not being able to bring Gran. He reassures them that they will still do everything they can to help. Claire explains that the Royal Knights are also investigating, but the tournament has limited how many people they can spare. Claire and her mother bow deeply and beg the group to take good care of her brother. Claire shows them a photo of Ortez. She recalls hearing that he went to a tavern the previous night, even though drinking is not something he usually does. She assumes he went there after losing his match in the tournament. When asked why he joined the tournament at all, Claire admits it was something he did for her sake. She hesitates before revealing that she is actually ill. She quickly reassures them that her condition is not contagious. She adds that while the illness is not infectious, it's unusual. Claire hesitates until she reveals that she has the demonization disease. Claire's words hang heavy over the table as Kiko notes how a cure exists in her homeland. Luke reflects that there was no such curse back then. Claire explains that the illness slowly twists the body into something monstrous before ending in death. She says that ancient races may call the condition a blessing, but humans have no cure except an impossibly expensive universal elixir. Kiko connects the tournament prize to the elixir. The group begins to understand why Ortez chose to enter. Claire clenches fabric as she refuses to have his disappearance as the cost. Tears spill as she admits he had been searching for a cure all this time. She says simply seeing her brother succeed would have been enough for her. The group listens in silence as she cries. Luke's expression tightens. He reassures them that they're also participating in the tournament. He declares that one of them will claim third place and bring back the elixir. Claire and Onette stare in shock. Even as they protest and panic at the idea, Luke calmly brushes it off. He promises that they will return together with Ortez and the elixir. Iris and Kiko immediately agree as they commit to the plan. Claire struggles to speak through her tears. Both Claire and her mother bow deeply as they thank them. The final round of the qualifiers erupts as the tournament reaches a breaking point. Luke finishes the match cleanly and advances to the finals. From the crowd, a familiar voice offers quiet praise. Iris calmly confirms that all three of them have qualified for the main tournament ahead. Luke admits he cannot afford to lose now since he is bound by a promise to Claire. Iris explains that the true challenge is only beginning since the tournament will unfold with multiple brackets and eliminations. Each bracket guarantees advancement, making third place the minimum reward for any winner. Luke reflects that the best possible outcome would be for all three of them to advance together as he realizes Kiko is missing. The door suddenly bursts open as Kiko rushes in at full speed. She urgently announces that Chiffon obtained a new lead, and Iris and Luke turn serious. They arrive at the tavern as Chiffon mentions an event near the capital. She cheerfully explains that a report mentions 6 carriages traveling together. Luke questions why such an ordinary detail matters while being urged to listen. Chiffon calmly explains that the gate records hold the answer. She points out that no more than 4 carriages ever leave the city together, each from a different gate. The carriages split up and regrouped later, and their cargo records did not align. She illustrates that apples are listed as cargo despite the carriage heading toward an apple-producing region. Luke summarizes the conclusion that the entire setup was a deliberate disguise. Chiffon concludes that the suspicious carriages are heading west, and leaves the group to wonder how far their plan goes. She explains that the carriages continue west past the trade lines and Federation territories. The realization hits that their route would inevitably lead toward the holy nation of Arca. The name alone brings up the image of the saintess tied to that nation. Both Luke and Iris react tensely. Chiffon describes Arca as a religious state devoted entirely to faith and ruled by a powerful theocracy beyond Leonard's borders. She explains that the carriages were confirmed to be heading there, but their final destination remains unclear. She notes that several border villages surround the area. Luke stands up and decides that knowing the direction is enough to move forward quickly. Chiffon hesitates and questions whether chasing the carriages so suddenly is the right call. Luke reasons that the information came from reliable adventurers, and that the risk of ignoring it could be far worse if it proves true. He He says there is no time to waste and they must move immediately. Chiffon tells them that she will send someone else to verify the information in case it turns out to be a false trail. Luke decides that he is willing to call in Gran and the others if things escalate. Iris voices her concern about how they are supposed to reach the destination in time when they still have a match tomorrow. Luke calculates that traveling by carriage would take an entire day, making it impossible for all of them to go together. He resolves to go alone using his body enhancement magic. Iris instinctively grabs his sleeve. She begs him not to take such a reckless risk by himself. She insists that she trusts him and believes he will be fine. She admits feeling uneasy, knowing that the destination is near the Holy Garden. Luke gently calls out to Iris, while Kiko suggests that this may be the moment for them to finally step in. She declares it is time to reveal their true strength, as she calls forth Fucall. She forms a spell with practiced ease and unleashes a transformation. Iris and Luke stare in shock. The magic erupts as Fucall transforms into a towering wolf wreathed in power. Kiko cheers in delight. Luke struggles to reconcile the tiny creature they knew with the enormous beast now standing before them. Iris grows serious as she senses its power. She notices that Fucall is radiating holy energy. Kiko proudly explains that this is possible because Fucall is a holy beast. Iris processes the revelation with wide eyes. Luke admits he never expected Fucall to be anything extraordinary. Kiko scratches her head and admits there are limits. She explains that Fucall can switch forms freely for a day once transformed, but must wait an entire month afterward. The group relaxes as they agree they only need her speed for tonight. Luke checks on Iris while she admits she cannot make direct contact with the holy energy. Kiko senses something is off and prompts Luke to awkwardly explain. She reacts in exaggerated shock upon learning Iris cannot ride at all. She collapses in frustration that her chance to be useful slips away. Luke explains that Iris doesn't respond to holy energy well when Kiko calls out to Fuka. Luke reacts in confusion as she commands the wolf to suppress its holy energy. Fuko lowers her power as the holy energy fades away. The group reacts in amazement as they realize a holy beast can freely suppress its own divine energy. Iris confirms the change by physically checking herself. With the problem resolved, Iris is finally able to ride. The group then sets off at full speed to chase after the carriages. Concern flares when Kiko notices Luke struggling to stay awake. She urgently warns him not to fall asleep. Luke forces himself to stay alert, only to sense something strange. Fucall slows down as Luke detects an unusually strong magical presence coming from the nearby village. He senses multiple adventurers nearby and decides they should investigate anyway. He peers into what seems to be the only inn in the village and sees no adventurer. Fucall reacts to the magical presence concentrated within the village. Fucall breaks free and alarms the group. They bolt forward as they realize Fucall has picked up Ortez's scent and is actively tracking it. Kiko reveals she borrowed Ortez's handkerchief from Claire. Luke abruptly recognizes something familiar. The group spots carriages ahead and realizes they're the suspicious ones they have been looking for. Kiko suddenly leaps into the carriage. She urgently calls for help and pushes the others to assist her. Hidden magic flares up around Luke and reveals that it had been deliberately concealed. The magical readings spike sharply as crates shift inside the carriage. Luke directs everyone's attention deeper inside the storage space. They spot a single box tucked away at the back. Kiko gushes that it looks like a coffin while Luke senses that the magic is still alive. The group unloads the coffins from the carriage and prepares to inspect them properly. A latch clicks open, and Luke peers into the crate. Inside the box lies Ortez, who is unconscious. As more crates are opened, the group realizes there are multiple people hidden away. Iris examines one of the victims and concludes that they have been put to sleep by magic. Kiko realizes that the other carriages must be carrying other adventurers. Luke suggests that waking everyone at once may be risky, so they decide to move the victims somewhere safe first. Night settles over the village as the group realizes only one suspicious carriage remains. They hurry through the streets together, relieved that everyone they rescued so far is still safe. With the innkeeper's cooperation, the victims are brought inside safely. His eye sharpens. He spots 4 boxes being carried away. He realizes that the number of sealed boxes matches exactly the people they have not yet brought to the inn. Luke shouts for them to stop. Figures suddenly emerge from the darkness. Iris urgently tells Luke to leave everything to them and push forward instead. Kiko declares that she will fight as well. Luke apologizes as he commits to moving ahead. The group rallies together and promises to hold the attackers off no matter what. A lone figure escapes into the night. Footsteps pound against the ground as he lets out a quiet breath. The hooded carrier expresses relief while noting how quickly Luke managed to keep pace with him. Luke asks if he tied them up. The figure remarks that even tying someone up cleanly could almost count as a strange point of pride. He lunges as he boasts on his goal to not cause any death. Steel clashes in a blur. Luke manages to unhand the opponent. The figure scoffs and praises Luke. Just before he lunges straight into his face, Luke catches his fist just in time. He grows alarmed when the figure suddenly slips past his grasp. Luke admits that keeping an enemy alive is far more difficult and asks for advice. The hooded man pauses in thought. He suggests getting raised in the worst possible home environment as well as absolute loyalty. Luke questions who owns his loyalty. The man implies that they'll be worthless if he spills the truth out. He raises a finger and warns Luke that he should be focusing on something else entirely. Luke stands confused as he looks back. He turns to the village, being engulfed in flames. He whirls and demands to know what the man did to the village. He pauses when he sees the person already missing from his position. The magical presence he was tracking suddenly disappears, unable to believe it vanished so instantly. Realization hits him hard as the memory surfaces, knowing he has been manipulated. He rushes to the village and sees civilians flee in panic. He raises his hand and begins drawing power from the air as storm clouds gather overhead. Rain finally pours down as he commands it. He focuses on maintaining control, relieved that the rescue is progressing without chaos. He realizes that the girls are missing and suspects they chased after the men in black, who escaped. He stares ahead, and he spots two men standing strangely. He rushes and confronts the man about the carriages. He freezes when the man responds oddly. He sways in the rain with unfocused eyes and a flushed face. Luke feels a strange pressure as he questions whether something is interfering with people's minds. He quickly dismisses the idea of sustained magical brainwashing and reasons that a temporary mental collapse could still explain what he is seeing. He decides that these are the only witnesses they have, regardless of the cause. He decides to restrain the remaining suspects and leave them secured for the time being. Villagers begin helping the unconscious settle in. Luke turns sharply at the sound of someone calling out. Relief washes over him as he confirms that the girls are safe. He immediately asks them what happened. They hesitate briefly before preparing to explain. They recount how they chased down the men in black who escaped the village and tied them up after. A man suddenly chokes halfway. They discover that poison had been hidden inside them from the very beginning, and no healing could undo it. The girls say that the attackers intended to die from the start, and that they were far too naive to realize it sooner. He admits that the culprits also managed to slip past him. He recalls how the magical trail vanished all at once despite his careful tracking. The possibility of magic being hidden, even his senses, unsettles them. His thoughts drift back to the hooded man, realizing that such a feat should be impossible with modern methods alone. Kiko questions where the fire truly began, and Luke traces it to the carriages that spread the flames outward. He concludes that some kind of timed magic or magical device must have been used. He reflects that at least the disaster happened after the villagers were evacuated. A villager suddenly calls out that they are done eating, and Luke responds casually. He decides it is time to dispel the lingering magic and wake everyone who was put under its effect. He invokes a restraint-breaking spell and commands the magic to release its hold. The spell activates and breaks the enchantment binding the unconscious victims. Iris compares the scene to a fairy tale awakening. She realizes her comment sounded wrong just as an adventurer rises. The man stirs on the floor as he wakes and struggles to understand where he is, approaches him and recognizes him as the adventurer who fought Gaia. He asks the man if he remembers what happened before losing consciousness, and the man confirms that he does. He explains that he was suddenly attacked by strange figures dressed in black. Luke concludes that the man was put to sleep by magic and notes with relief that he is responding normally. The man asks if the group saved everyone, and they admit most were saved but some were taken away. The man acknowledges how serious the situation became and how badly things escalated. He offers to repay the favor for saving them. The room falls quiet as Luke hears Iris address him. The man reassures Luke that he will explain everything to the others and allows Luke to step away. Ortez begins stirring weakly. Luke leans in as he checks on him. Ortez disorientedly asks who they are and where he has ended up. Luke introduces himself and the others. They explain that Ortez was reported missing from the royal capital and that they finally found him after tracing a carriage that traveled an entire day away. Ortez accepts the explanation and expresses gratitude for being saved. He admits that he had already resigned himself to dying back then. He asks why they chose to save him when they were complete strangers. He claims to have noticed them specifically looking for him. His eyes widen when Luke mentions Claire. Luke explains that he came because Claire personally asked him to. Panic overtakes Ortez as he desperately asks about his sister's safety. He is reassured that Claire is safe at home with Onette and that there is nothing to fear. Relief finally washes over him as he relaxes. He cautiously asks whether the group are acquaintances of his sister. Luke explains their meeting and Ortez praises his selflessness. He thanks them once more and declares he can keep working for his sister's sake. Luke casually brings up the universal elixir Ortez is looking for. Ortez explains that he entered the tournament hoping for an opportunity, but his lack of skill stopped him before he could even reach the main rounds. He admits that he simply chose to keep working steadily after that failure. Luke reveals that they are still competing, and that at least one is guaranteed to place third among the three of them. The realization hits him all at once. He asks if they are truly that selfless, and they answer without hesitation that this is simply who they are. Luke reflects that they are no longer bound by their former roles or positions. He smiles and explains that they chose to live a life doing what they genuinely wanted to do. Ortez laughs in disbelief as he admits he never expected such kindness. He sincerely thanks them as his tears well up. Back in the city, Claire peeks out from behind the doorframe. Her eyes widen as tears well up. She immediately rushes forward and clings tightly to her brother. She thanks everyone with trembling sincerity. The group gently tells her that their job is not finished yet, and that gratitude can wait until later. The girl nods with a small smile as she promises to cheer for them. The night quickly passes into the morning. Luke groggily answers a knock at the door while thinking about his upcoming match schedule. Gran suddenly appears and greets him casually, despite the early hour. Gran greets him with an easy grin, already knowing Luke barely slept at all. He shows proof that he checked the match schedule ahead of time. He then explains that he went ahead to review everything and suggests heading to the arena after a bit of rest. As coffee steams on the table, Gran praises the group's decision to save the abducted adventurers. The group notes that the knights are still investigating in the village and that they were questioned as well. Luke mentions that the adventurers they saved spoke up for them, which allowed them to return earlier. Gran admits his surprise at the curse lifting and reminds Luke that such abilities are usually reserved for priests. Gran warns him to stay cautious and avoid bringing suspicious figures back home. The conversation turns serious again as Luke asks whether anything was uncovered about the true mastermind. Gran admits that the investigation only uncovered how thoroughly the truth had been erased. Even the captured men offered nothing. The only clear conclusion is that whoever orchestrated the attack vanished completely. He reflects that even finding the victims would have been nearly impossible without their intervention. He gives them sincere credit for their actions. Then he suddenly taps Luke's shoulder and promises to update them. He reminds them that the long-awaited tournament is finally beginning. The arena roars to life as the main tournament officially opens. Luke steps forward as he's introduced as the rising rookie who defeated Shin. Yumi notes that the arena buzzes with more excitement than ever before. Iris wonders if Luke's opponent really is as famous as everyone says. Yumi confirms it and says he is known by everyone. She names him Leonard's strongest magician as he finally materializes before Luke. Luke stiffens as he catches sight of his opponent. Billy steps forward and openly laments the unfairness of being matched against someone so young. He acknowledges his injuries and says he'll have to withdraw. Luke watches in shock and realizes this so-called Dragon Man is dangerous. Elsewhere, guards stand alert before closed doors. King Leonard turns to the voice that calls him. He formally welcomes the arriving Saintess into the chamber. The Saintess responds with a gentle smile. Everyone turns their attention to the arena below. The Saintess takes a bite of a biscuit, smiling sweetly as she praises the taste. The king greets her warmly, apologizing for calling her away mid-tournament while activity continues outside the arena. The Saintess emphasizes her role as a simple priestess and her gratitude for being granted an audience. She reveals her curiosity about how the tournament has been progressing. Leonard asks whether there is a standout contestant worth noting. She mentions Luke, who is currently in the arena. Leonard consults his guards and asks for their honest assessment of Luke. The guards praise Luke's swordsmanship and magic and confidently suggest he is fit for royal service. Leonard acknowledges their answers and praises the Saintess's sharp judgment. He then narrows his gaze and asks whether she discovered the men. The room grows tense around the question. The attendant stiffens, while the Saintess lowers her eyes and smiles faintly. Her eyes glint with confusion as she reacts. She gently claims she does not understand what he is referring to. She asks if the men in black did something to Leonard. He exhales and dismisses the worry. He explains that many adventurers across the kingdom have recently gone missing. He reveals they have been searching for the one responsible and briefly suspected her. Leonard reassures her that the suspicion has been cleared and that everyone has been questioned only as a precaution. Leonard apologizes for the trouble, and she insists there is no need for apologies. He explains that the matter is tied to national security and that she bears no fault for being uninformed. He formally dismisses them and apologizes for taking up her time. The Saintess bows deeply in gratitude. The two women rise and begin to leave together. They both quietly admit they had no idea such an incident had even occurred. The Saintess reflects on the mass disappearance and hopes that everyone remains safe. Leonard asks the guards what they think of the situation. One guard voices suspicion and notes how strange it is that the Saintess showed almost no reaction at all. The other guard agrees and adds that reports confirm men dressed in black were seen heading toward the Arca. Leonard concludes that they cannot confidently declare the Saintess innocent. He then points out that there is still no proof. He asks how many agents remain tracking the men in black, and the guard tells him only 2 remain. He explains that the rest were either shaken off or killed. Leonard lowers his gaze, his attention lingering on Luke, who saved the captured adventurers. He questions the guards again about their recommendation, and they affirm that their praise for the boy is sincere and without exaggeration. The guards insist his raw skill and potential make him worthy of serious consideration for promotion. Leonard decides that the tournament's outcome will settle things soon. Back in the arena, the clash resumes with explosive speed. Luke acknowledges Billy's ability. He ridicules the fact that the old man intended to withdraw. Billy scoffs loudly and declares that what Luke is seeing now is his true effort and not some careless mistake. He says that only a fool would face someone like Luke. Still, he is determined to not let such an opportunity slip by. He drives his staff into the ground. He chants about ancient memories and calls upon a forbidden source to awaken a partial transformation. Luke stiffens as he senses the power. He recalls that this technique originated in the era of the Demon King and was once studied by his master. The spell takes form as Billy's body twists into a draconic state that was never meant to be completed. Billy challenges Luke directly and boasts as power gathers in his hand. He launches a violent lightning-infused attack toward Luke while shouting. A blazing beam slams into the barrier, sending cracks rippling across its surface. Billy recoils in frustration as he notes that the barrier cannot be broken so easily. He admits he attempted to break it when he heard even a special class mage couldn't. Luke wonders aloud about the spell that's supposedly unfinished. Billy boasts that researching magic is his life's work and that he rewrote the ancient spells in his own way. Luke remarks that he would like to read it someday. Billy gathers power as he agrees to let Luke read if the boy manages to defeat him. A massive column of lightning crashes down towards Luke and forces him to sprint forward. Billy lunges in after the strike. Luke immediately conjures up a barrier between them. Luke realizes that the change he senses in his opponent is not just physical. He acknowledges that Blue's abilities are beginning to resemble something draconic. He recognizes a rare blend of refined martial arts and dragon-like perception. His eyes sharpen as he notices a flaw. He slips past Billy's line of sight. Luke notes that the transformation is incomplete and obvious to someone who understands true dragons. Luke grins and reminds Billy of the promise they made as he appears behind him. Billy's expression twists in shock. Luke delivers the final blow in a burst of speed. Luke grins as the announcer declares him the winner. The crowd erupts in cheers and applause. The group beams and praises his performance. Luke downplays the praise as they marvel that he defeated a veteran mage. Kiko notices how their presence is drawing attention. Rust insists that Luke's skill makes other matches feel dull by comparison. Luke says that the next match will not be any different from his. Across the arena, Iris approaches Yumi. Iris notes the intensity and lethal focus radiating from Yumi. Yumi admits she has trained relentlessly for years to reach this moment. She says that her goal is revenge against both Iris and Luke. She explains that as an adventurer who studied ancient clans and demons, she once believed herself strong. She recalls how 7 years ago, the two of them shattered her confidence with ease. Iris insists they had no other choice back then. Yumi rejects that view, unable to see anything but failure. She describes how a single wrong move could have cost lives or dragged innocent villagers into disaster. She declares that this is why she has grown stronger through real combat and hard lessons learned from Iris and Luke. Iris questions whether Yumi truly intends to take their lives. Yumi answers that such an outcome may be possible. Her eyes widen when Iris acknowledges her response. Dark energy floods the arena as Iris stands firm and accepts the idea of personal revenge. Her gaze hardens as she draws a clear line, making it known that Luke is not something she is willing to compromise on. Yumi shouts her resolve while internally confessing she does not truly wish for their death. A flicker of excitement crosses her face. She declares her true desire for a full battle against an ancient demon at its peak. The signal is given and the duel officially begins. Iris immediately lunges for an attack as Yumi sets up a barrier. Yumi senses danger immediately. She sees Iris's anger so intense it is impossible to miss. The onlookers react in disbelief as the stage collapses under bare-handed force. Yumi acknowledges that she's battling an ancient demon at full strength. She recalls hearing others whisper about monstrous mana and spells. Yumi insisted that strength should come from effort alone, even as doubt creeps in. Yumi finally understands the fear gripping her chest. She can finally see a racial power gap that cannot be ignored. She looks up in alarm as a glowing barrier strains under a direct punch, her hope resting on the spell holding just a bit longer. Cracks spread across the barrier as the fist drives deeper. Yumi grins as she prepares a decisive spell. Thunder and ice spiral across the arena as the attack surges forward. Luke and Rust tense up in shock. Yumi thrusts her palms out and hastily forms a green barrier. Iris's fist slams straight into the shield. Yumi grimaces as the barrier strains. A powerful shockwave erupts and launches her high into the air. Iris gathers power in her palm as she looks up. She fires the concentrated blast skyward. Yumi twists midair and stabilizes herself. Translucent wings unfold from her back as she deploys her spell. Iris stares up in stunned silence. She recognizes Yumi's trump card as flight magic. The spectators panic as they realize she is actually flying. Russ questions whether Luke ever taught her the spell, and he denies it. He explains that true flight magic is costly and unstable. Iris observes that what she is using is far more efficient than ancient demon flight. She questions whether this technique was self-made, and Yumi slightly confirms it. Yumi hesitates and wonders if Iris is not mad anymore. Iris points out that Yumi only wanted her to fight at full power. She admits it suited the situation perfectly. She vents her lingering irritation about Yumi threatening Luke. Yumi realizes what that confession truly implies. She sets up magic spells as she acknowledges that Iris's anger is real after all. Iris charges through with relentless momentum as she avoids the attacks. Yumi pauses for a moment when she notices that Iris is not using flight magic like she anticipated. She watches Iris crouch low and suspects she has another plan. Iris rushes straight in and closes the distance faster than expected. Yumi notes that Iris is only making a simple jump and that the air still gives her the advantage. She pulls back to create space. Iris smiles faintly as she shifts her footing. In a blur, she appears directly beneath Yumi. Yumi recoils in shock as she realizes the jumps are coming from different angles altogether. Confusion flashes across her face. A small barrier blooms beneath Iris's feet and reveals the true mechanism behind her advance. Iris explains that she is chaining small barriers together as stepping stones. Yumi flinches as a fist rushes past her guard. She notes how Iris had been making it look seamless, but the truth is, she had been predicting each landing with terrifying precision. Yumi shouts in frustration as she hovers back. Her expression falters as the pressure mounts. She winces midair as she senses her mana draining faster. She thinks about abandoning offense and shifting fully into defense. Iris smiles at the situation she has forced. Yumi refuses to remain on defense and decides to risk everything on the last strike. Magic gathers around her as she prepares an attack. Iris warns that pushing further will only exhaust what little mana remains. She urges her to surrender and spend her remaining mana on defense. Yumi gathers herself and declares that she refuses to give up no matter how desperate it looks. She admits that facing such overwhelming power head-on fills her with joy. Iris reflects that she finally understands a fraction of what it meant to be a demon king challenged by all. She reminds herself why Luke was always forced to fight alone. She mentions a quote about strength and promises she will not evade the next attack. Yumi steadies her stance and answers the challenge with calm resolve. A massive sphere of ice forms overhead as Yumi commits everything into a single spell. She admits this is the fullest strength she can muster. Iris smiles in anticipation of the attack. The massive ice launches towards her, and shock flickers across her face for the first time. In the alley, Luke calls out to Iris and praises her efforts. He checks on her and she assures him she is fine. Yumi lies dizzy on the bed as Iris explains that she overused mana and only needs rest for the spinning to pass. Luke notes how the fight pushed Iris's limits in the end. Iris recalls the massive ice sphere that Yumi unleashed. She charges straight through the ice as the spell shatters. She closes the distance and drives a decisive blow into Yumi. Yumi staggers in pain. Iris reveals her frozen arm and points out that Yumi saved her trump card for the finale. Yumi lets out a strained and amused breath. She acknowledges her own move before she collapses to the ground. The announcement echoes as Iris is declared the winner. Iris explains how a freezing spell was layered in the background and hidden beneath a simpler attack. She smiles with embarrassment and admits she underestimated that technique. Luke teases her about losing the next time she faces Yumi and she flusters. A staff member calls out for Luke as his match is next. Iris steps aside with a grin and says she will be watching closely from the seats. Luke smiles, ready to prove himself after witnessing Iris's earlier battle. He promises to do his best, all the more after knowing that his opponent is top tier. Footsteps echo in front of him. Gran reflects aloud on the 7 years since they first met. They recall sparring back in the village and note how different things were without mana involved. Luke teases Gran not to go all out for a clean victory for him. Gran shuts that down and makes it clear this fight deserves full focus. He recalls Luke shattering a machine bare-handed back in the ruins. He admits that moment changed his entire outlook and showed him how limited his world had been. He began wanting to meet more people, which is why he made his clan. Luke blinks in surprise as it dawns on him that the clan meant more than recruiting him. Luke admits he would have joined their clan even without conditions. Gran gestures toward the arena and points out how the city has been buzzing. He says that Luke's matches with Shin and Billy gave adventurers something to believe in. He says that some who witness this fight will likely dream of becoming adventurers themselves. He tells Luke that none of it would have happened without him and thanks him for it. Luke replies that the feeling is mutual and admits he is still the same person who once could not do anything alone. He says he would have never found out that Iris was still alive. He never would have met his new friends like Kiko and Gaia. He says that his life truly began moving the day he met Gran. Gran admits that hearing Luke say that genuinely means a lot to him. The two take their positions in the arena and agree to finally fight seriously with nothing held back. Mana coils tightly around Luke's body as he centers himself. He admits that holding back against Gran is nearly impossible. He acknowledges that the amount of mana he can circulate right now is already close to his limit. Gran lets out a low laugh. The signal is given as the duel officially begins. Steel crashes instantly as Luke closes the distance. The battlefield fills with Luke's infused strikes surrounding Gran from every direction. Luke gathers power into his hand. He fires a condensed burst of mana straight ahead. Gran twists his body and cuts through the blast. Iris observes that Gran's control of mana bullets is far more refined now. She recalls how a similar exchange once knocked him out in a single strike. Luke grins and acknowledges how much Gran has improved. Gran credits the growth to intense training. The counterattack slams into the ground and reminds Luke that one clean hit would decide the match. He recognizes that faster, lighter blows even out the exchange into a near stalemate. Luke decides that trading openings is no longer an option if he wants to win. Gran taunts him and asks if Luke's finally stopped trying to overwhelm him with speed. He then admits it has been ages since he last heard excitement like this in an arena. He notes how fast Luke's mana recovers and jokes that it almost makes him want to keep talking. Without warning, he launches into a heavy downward strike. Luke twists away just in time as the blow crashes. A close smirk forms on Gran's face. He lifts his weapon once more, and Luke's eyes react in alarm. The two reset their distance across the arena floor. Gran chuckles and calls him out for getting reckless. Luke wipes the blood from his face as Gran calls him the Demon King. Iris realizes that Gran is the first opponent to wound Luke. Luke casually admits that if he had not lowered his guard back then, the hero never would have been able to defeat him. Gran addresses Luke as the Demon King and latches onto his carelessness. He asks if Luke will allow him to be the second human to defeat him. Luke laughs it off with a smile and calls Gran bold for declaring it so openly. Gran reacts with mild surprise as Luke asks him to stop using that title. Gran smirks and points out that the crowd has already started calling him that lately. Luke freezes for a moment as the name Demon King Luke fully sinks in. Gran reassures him that it is only a nickname and not meant literally. Luke grimaces as Gran teases him. Gran explains that the spectators watched Luke's preliminary fights closely. They started to picture him as a king that's savoring the hunt. Gran says this is only the first reason as Luke reacts with surprise that there is still more to hear. Gran points out that his later victories changed everything. He explains how Luke defeated Shin and Billy, who are supposedly champions admired as heroes in the royal capital. Luke realizes his image has naturally been twisted into that of a demon king in contrast to symbols of justice. Gran presses on with a final reason. He clarifies that this judgment is not personal. He brings up Luke's living situation with Iris and Kiko. He notes how both girls are advancing through the tournament brackets and quietly proving their overwhelming strength. He says that he's now called the Demon King and the two girls his underlings. Gran casually corrects himself about calling them underlings. He says that Iris and Kiko are said to be romantically tied to Luke. Gran laughs it off and starts explaining, clearly enjoying Luke's confusion. He describes how Iris and Kiko naturally draw attention in town. Luke presses in disbelief. Gran explains that when those admirers approach, the girls respond in a way that shuts them down instantly. He paints a picture of strangers trying to flirt and being firmly rejected. Iris coldly tells them that she has a brother. Kiko adds to it by cheerfully listing the comforts of home with Luke. The rumors start to paint Luke as a demon king who corrupted those closest to him. Gran says that this is simply the gossip spreading through the capital. He asks Luke if any of it is actually true. Luke firmly denies it and admits he never expected such a title to follow him in his next life. The mood shifts as Luke lets the gossip slide. He decides that he should fight in a way that lives up to it if he is to be called a demon king. Gran stares in disbelief, unnerved by the overwhelming mana. He recalls how the Demon King is misunderstood by humans and forced to restrain his power so as not to inspire terror. He realizes that Luke has never once fought at his true full strength. Gran admits that this power is no joke and leaves him with no choice but to acknowledge Luke's title. Luke tells him that he's never gone this far except when he fought against the hero. When questioned, Luke reminds Gran that he fought 4 against 1. Luke says he has no intention of losing this match either. He declares that defeating him may finally earn Gran the right to be called a hero. His past self gazes forward in silence, and Gran can only stare back in return. Gran pushes back against the idea of heroes in this era. Magic coils around Gran as he gathers his resolve. He commits to the fight and chooses to meet the challenge head-on. Luke realizes Gran is forcibly pushing his mana beyond its natural limit. He notes that neither of them will escape the collapse unscathed if it continues. Luke acknowledges that the strain affecting Gran also applies to him. He reveals that the explosive surge of mana